What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto saves Shisui from Danzo? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. And then I managed to summon Lord Fukusaku instead of the chief. Naruto said. Sakura looked at the knucklehead knowingly. What did you do then? She asked him, knowing that he would tell her anyway. I was amazed to see such a small toad appear after the amount of chakra I burnt to perform the summoning. But the pervy sage told me that Lord Fukusaku was an elder and even he was amazed that I had managed to summon him. He even asked the old frog afterwards why he even answered the summons, and the frog told him that he had felt that nobody apart from Jiraiya had summoned him before. He was surprised and so he decided to show up to see who had summoned him. Naruto grinned sheepishly while Sakura looked at him, still amazed by the ability of Naruto to do the impossible. She said, I meant, what you did about the fight, Baka. Oh yeah, well, at first I thought that this summoning hadn't worked out. The old geezer frog had a lot of power for his age. He told us to distract the wolves for a minute while he meditated, and when he was done, he casually picked up the wolves as though they were small cats. And he threw them so far away that even I couldn't sense their smell anymore. Needless to say, they never came back to that area again. But then when I realized that the frog was an elder, it seemed kinda obvious for him to have such strength, didn't it? Sakura nodded. It had been just over a month since they had rescued Gaara from the Akatsuki. Well, more like brought back from the dead, considering what had transpired and Lady Chiyo's sacrifice. They had been waiting at the gates of the village for Kakashi-sensei, who as usual was keeping up his reputation of being tardy. However, this time Naruto and Sakura had not minded as much as they would normally have, having a lot to talk about in the years of absence of Naruto from the village. Yo, Kakashi said as he sunshined in front of his two students. All thoughts vanished from the minds of the two as they dramatically pointed at him in practiced synchronization and bawled out, "You're late again." Well, a black cat crossed my path and Kakashi began and then barely ducked as two kunai were flung straight at where his head had been a second ago. Don't you give us that lame crap again, sensei, we don't fall for it anymore. Were you at the memorial stone again? Naruto queried. Kakashi rubbed his head, sheepishly nodding, and said, well, yeah I was, before trailing off. But then he gave them his famous eye smile. I have some news for you guys. The Hokage has given us a week off for some intense training. Sakura's expression remained neutral while Naruto jumped with ecstatic joy, all his anger forgotten. All right, sensei. That's just what I needed right now. Naruto shouted. I don't mean any offense, Kakashi-sensei, but can I know why we suddenly were given a week off for training? I can't quite get my head around it. Sakura asked, still carefully neutral. Kakashi nodded knowingly and said, I knew you might ask. I asked Lady Tsunade the exact same question. But her answer made me realize how right she was. Well? Sakura asked while inner Sakura groused, out with it already. Kakashi looked at the two of them seriously. The Hokage believes that we need to get in some serious training, not only because it has been a long time since we have worked together, but also because she believes that the two of you must really work on your teamwork. 3 years ago, Sakura had only just begun training in medical jutsu and didn't serve much of a team partner in combat. We were the ones who did the fighting while she hung back, waiting to heal us or to protect any client. But things have changed now, he continued. Sakura has become a full-fledged kunoichi now, able to take hits and punish others as well. Her raw strength, coupled with your stupidly ridiculous endurance, Naruto, will be more than enough to take out huge amounts of enemies in a fight. So the Hokage decided to give us this week off to learn new strategies, new combinations of attacks, and of course, new jutsu as well. Sakura nodded, knowing that 3 years ago, she probably would be worrying more about her hair getting spoiled rather than taking her training seriously. She wondered how much stronger Naruto must have gotten in the past 3 years. She could see the lean figure he cut now, because of his uniform being a little tighter than the old orange jumpsuit. She wondered how much time he had spent training, though, considering that he was trained by the biggest pervert in the world. Well then, that being said, if you guys are up for it now, I'll show you the place where we shall be training, Kakashi said, to which both of them nodded. The three of them stopped at a small clearing around 10 miles outside the village. It was a small plain ground, surrounded by fruit trees on all sides, with a small stream flowing down at one side. Kakashi looked around and said, I was partly responsible for creating this place. Sakura looked at him so fast that she cricked her neck. She put it back in place with a snap, still looking at him incredulously. How, sensei? She inquired. When I was in the Anbu, my team was sent here to ward off some stone ninja, who were trying to infiltrate the leaf. Needless to say, the battle was quite fierce, and of course, the stone ninjas don't give a damn about trees. I was quite famous back then for my Sharingan, and copied one of their techniques and used it before them. I didn't even know what it was going to do, but I was young and foolish and consumed by darkness. Sakura allowed him 30 seconds of reminiscence before loudly clearing her throat. Kakashi looked mildly embarrassed and continued. Anyway, the entire area was covered with a thick barrier of hot stone which burned all the trees it hit and also killed all the stone ninjas, except for one. After a while the jutsu stopped and the stone automatically disappeared, leaving me to wonder whether it was a space-time manipulation or something of the sort. The only stone ninja who survived had his leg burned so badly, it was later amputated to save him. He later told us that he was part of a group of ninjas who were exiled from the stone village. They had tried to infiltrate the leaf so that they could steal vital information in order to buy their way back into the stone village. He was given a chance to live as a normal civilian in the leaf village and jumped at the chance. He is a Guromo, the man who runs the largest ninja supply shop in the village. We learned from him that his crafting skills are extremely well refined and gave him a chance to prove his loyalty. And it seemed to work out well. Anyway, he said, enough talking about the past. I found out that despite the circumstances around the creation of this plane, it is an extremely convenient place to train, being far enough from the village not to be disturbed, but close enough should we have to return in an emergency. So I thought we would rough it out here for a week rather than risking suspension for destroying any training grounds, considering the strength that both of you have, combined. Naruto and Sakura smirked at him. Well, what are we waiting for, Kakashi-sensei? What do we start with? Naruto said, before he noticed the, you're a retard, expressions on both Kakashi and Sakura's faces. What? He asked defensively. I don't know if you're ready to sleep on the ground, Naruto, but I sure as hell am not, Sakura replied. We'll need to get our tents, sleeping bags and other supplies as well. Right, sensei? Absolutely, came the reply. Well, couldn't you just say so? Naruto grumbled. We'll meet here tomorrow at around 8 a.m., and be sure to bring in some weapons, we can practice those throughout the week too. Kakashi said. Alright, sensei, both his students said. See you tomorrow, then, said Kakashi and vanished from their view. Sakura and Naruto took to the trees, discussing what types of training they might undergo under their sensei. As they reached the main gates of the village, they bumped into Ino, Shikamaru and Choji. Hey Naruto and Sakura, Choji and Ino said, while Shikamaru lazily nodded at them in a most, whatever these guys said, expression. Hey, you guys, heading out for a mission, are ya? Naruto smiled. Yup, you got it. B-rank mission of some sort. We don't exactly know any details because this mission is on a need-to-know basis only, but the Ino-Shika-Cho formation was specially requested. So we're off to the edge of the land of fire, Choji said, while biting into a potato chip as he spoke. Alright. Well, good luck, guys. Naruto said boisterously, as they nodded to the duo and then took off to the trees. Naruto couldn't help but notice the curves and slender legs of Ino, what with his training with the pervy sage, and his own peeping habits. He suddenly felt a killing intent unleashed at him, and turned around to see Sakura staring at him, cracking her knuckles as though she would like nothing better than to beat the stuffing out of him. What do you think you were doing right now, staring at Ino's backside like that, Naruto? She yelled. Naruto quickly replied, I wasn't. I was just wondering what kind of mission they could have which was on a need-to-know basis only. She looked at him again, not entirely convinced, but accepted his explanation anyway. Naruto heaved a sigh of relief and praised himself for his improved ability to lie so smoothly. Just then Rado, who was at the village entrance, keeping a watch, got a call. The two of them hung back, listening in. It was fortunate that they did, because Rado said, it was Lady Tsunade. She wants to see the two of you. Anything urgent? Sakura asked, with a hint of worry lacing her voice. He replied, didn't sound that way, though I can't be 100% sure. He frowned. Either way, you better get going right away. Keeping the Hokage waiting is never good for one's health, you know? Naruto blanched. As they reached Ninja Ops, the duo saw the Hokage looking out of the glass window. She nodded to them and they shunshined straight into her office. She turned towards them and said, "As you may know, I have given the two of you a week off for some intense training along with Kakashi." Both of them nodded, wondering what the Sannin had in mind. "I wanted to talk about your skills a little bit." Sakura notices that the statement seemed to be directed more towards Naruto than towards her. Naruto, of course, remained blissfully obvious of the situation. The Hokage continued, "Naruto, you have a keen sense of combat and tactics while in the field. You have also displayed intelligence and creativity which many in the village would not have deemed possible from a knucklehead like you." Naruto turned to smirk at Sakura, who groaned. Then the smirk was wiped off his face as the Hokage said, "However, on paper, you are the weakest ninja in the Konohagakure." He looked at her in incredulous amazement, as did Sakura. Tsunade took her turn to smirk at him while he struggled to find words. Sakura fell into thought, thinking that if he was the weakest ninja in the village, then what it meant for the rest of them. But, he continued struggling until Tsunade put her hand up to silence him. She continued, "Of course, these records have not been updated for the past 3 years since you went for the training trip outside the village. Which is another reason why I wanted you training this week. I saw the skills that you showed during the belt test against Kakashi a month ago, but I want to judge all your skills properly. That is why, after the end of the week, I am going to personally spar with you, to record your skills as they are now." Sakura gasped involuntarily. For the Hokage to personally spar with a genin of the village was practically unheard of, even if the genin just happened to be the biggest knucklehead of the village. She asked nervously, "Milady, are you sure about this?" "Yes, I am quite sure, Sakura. Now, I will not only fight Naruto alone in an all-out battle, but I am also going to take a taijutsu test against the two of you after the training week is over. In this 2-on-1 match, only hand-to-hand combat will be allowed. That will give me an estimate of how good your teamwork is. The solo match with Naruto will take place after this one, so that the knucklehead can consider it as a warm-up." She grinned mischievously, "Which brings me back to your on-paper skills, Naruto." Naruto paled and began to speak, but she again stopped him and said, "You need to know if you want to improve your chances of being Hokage in the future. As it stands, most of your unarmed combat skills are ranked between C and E, while your weapons and genjutsu skills are practically non-existent. You only have 2 A-ranked techniques, the Rasengan and the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Your summoning technique, while impressive, is not uncommon and holds a C rank along with your jutsu. Now, we do not have much of an idea regarding the kind of training you received from Jiraiya, but I'm pretty sure he avoided genjutsu and weapons." Naruto nodded slightly, saying, "Pervy Sage only taught me the basics of genjutsu, mainly how to tell if you are trapped in one, and how to break out of one. And like you said, he totally avoided weapons. But it actually compensated for my unarmed training skills, by improving my taijutsu considerably. I reckon I could take Rock Lee on easily now." He said and then realized how that sounded, adding hastily, "I said that because the old pervert thinks that I could probably take on Guy-sensei in an even taijutsu match and beat him 45% of the time." Sakura looked at him numbly. Had Naruto really advanced that much in this time? Tsunade looks at his honest face and decided that he wasn't exaggerating. However, she decided that she would confirm it with Jiraiya soon. "Very well," she said, "let's proceed towards Sakura's report." Sakura nodded, knowing most of the records already. "As you know, even I have not focused on weapon skills a lot, a simple reason being, that in our time, weapons were considered a soft choice, because we were constantly at war with other villages and ninjutsu and taijutsu was the main focus during that time. This is the reason why neither of us taught you almost any weapons. And although I have learned a weapon and passed its skills on to you, I would be pleased if you took the help of a master in that weapon and asked him or her to train you." Sakura nodded, knowing that this would be the reaction of her teacher, and Naruto asked her, "Which weapon have you learned, Sakura?" She replied, "The battle axe." He nodded, realizing that with her immense strength inherited from the Hokage, she would be able to wield a battle axe quite easily. He considered the amount of damage she could do in a single swipe of the battle axe and understood how dangerous that weapon would be with the wielder as strong as Sakura. Then the Hokage continued, however, because of our heavy focus on taijutsu as well, I have left out genjutsu as well. Although Sakura is not oblivious to genjutsu unlike some others standing in this room. She paused to smirk at Naruto and then said, however, I would like you and Naruto both to work with a genjutsu expert to increase your skills in that regard. Sakura, your unarmed combat skills are mostly ranked between B and S, which is very impressive for a chunin. So I expect you to work on weapons, genjutsu and ninjutsu more, because you are sorely lacking in the latter as well. Sakura nodded, and Naruto asked Lady Tsunade, is there anyone in particular who can teach me any weapons? Other than Tenten? The Hokage frowned, knowing Tenten's mastery in weapons and wondering why Naruto didn't want to learn from her. But she didn't let it show and said, you can ask Iruka to teach you a few weapons. He recently made Jonin after you left the village and I'm sure he can teach you well, considering he was the only one who made an effort to teach you anyway. Naruto nodded and Tsunade said, now go, and do some intense training to get back in shape as Team 7. Hi. Both of them saluted her and shunshined back out of the office. On their way out of Ninja Ops, they ran into Shizune. Sakura immediately took the opportunity to ask her to teach them genjutsu. Shizune was happy to oblige and told them that she could take genjutsu lessons for them every weekend. They went towards the academy happily. Naruto met Iruka-sensei at the academy and Iruka was only happy to pass on his weapon skills to his favorite students. He took Naruto and Sakura to Ichiraku's for some ramen, and then asked them why they suddenly had an itching to learn weapons. Naruto told them of their situation on paper, and Iruka nodded, saying, well, unlike the Chunin exams, which you can pass by fluke or by using your teammates, the Jonin exams are a trial of the 5 pillars of the ninja arts. So unless you pass in all of them, you cannot become a full Jonin. So I will be happy to teach you all that I know. Which weapons do you know, Iruka-sensei? Sakura asked. I have learned the Xiphos, short sword, the Manriki Gusari, weighted chain, the pull staff, longsword, light-throwing blades, tonfas and the staff blade, which is my primary weapon. Sakura frowned, and asked, the staff blade, sensei? But that is just a training weapon and not usually used in real fights. Iruka nodded, taking a bite of noodles, and then said, do you know the way the staff blade works, Sakura? She nodded, saying, the staff blade incorporates attacks from any other weapon and makes it easier to practice different weapon styles at the same time with one weapon itself. Iruka nodded again, saying, not only that, but the staff blade can be used in any way that all of the rest of my weapons can be used. Except the light-throwing blades and Manriki Gusari, of course. So do you see the pattern here? Naruto spoke, since you have mastered all those weapons and the staff blade, you need only carry the staff blade with you and incorporate all the attacks from your other weapons into it. Both Iruka and Sakura looked as shocked as they felt. They hadn't expected Naruto to come up with an explanation with words that he couldn't even spell. They wondered if there was more to Naruto than he was letting them on. Naruto continued, Iruka-sensei, can you teach me the staff blade? I have had a longing to learn it for a while now, but I never found a teacher before. Iruka said, of course, I will. And what about you, Sakura? She thought about it and then said, I think I should go for the Manriki Gusari and the pull staff. Both are slightly long-range weapons, and the Manriki Gusari will allow me to use my strength, while the pull staff will help keep enemies at bay. Iruka smiled at her thoughtfulness and said, okay then, barring any missions you guys might have, we shall begin training every afternoon at 4. Naruto said, Sensei, we won't begin training until next week. Grandma Tsunade has given us the week of to get in some teamwork training done with Kakashi-sensei, so he won't be available to train with you till next week. Iruka looked at the two of them and thought, of course. Naruto has not been here in 3 years, and Sakura has turned out to be an excellent kunoichi as well. They will have to work on new strategies before they can head out for co-op missions. He smiled and said, not a problem, Naruto. It's not like I'm going anywhere. Okay then, see you later, sensei, they both said as they exited Ichiraku's. He smiled and continued eating silently. Okay Sakura, looks like we have some teachers to learn genjutsu and weapons from now on. Well, I'll see you tomorrow for the training with Kakashi-sensei. Naruto said. Then he added, make sure you reach by 10 a.m. Sakura frowned and said, but I thought Kakashi-sensei said 8, she trailed off realizing who she was talking about, and what Naruto had said and smiled mischievously. You got it, Naruto. They headed home and split up when they had to take separate paths. The two of them thought only one thing as they reached home. Why did Kakashi-sensei and Tsunade keep saying, intense training? Hey, good morning, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto wished his tardy teacher as he and Sakura jumped to the trees alongside him. Naruto? Kakashi looked at him. I thought I said 8 a.m. to you guys. Of course, when you say 8 a.m., you mean 10 a.m., sensei, Naruto said lightly, causing Kakashi to smile sheepishly. I guess you're right, he said as they continued along to their destination. They didn't speak for a while, then Naruto asked, so what kind of training are gonna do, sensei? You'll see soon enough, Naruto. It's twice the type of training I did back in the day. Kakashi replied, with just a hint of darkness in his voice. Naruto and Sakura shuddered involuntarily. They reached the plain where they were to train and set down their gear. They noticed that Naruto had only one small bag with him, which could definitely not have contained his tent within it. Sakura started getting annoyed and asked him, "Where's your tent bag, Baka?" Naruto just smirked at her, and pointed to his belt. Ever heard of storage scrolls, Sakura? Of course I have, what a stupid. She trailed off as she saw him focus his chakra into one of the scrolls he had just taken off his belt and saw a tent appear. She frowned, thinking, it's not uncommon to use storage scrolls for small things such as weapons, but to keep a tent or other bigger objects in scrolls requires a higher skill level of Fuinjutsu. I keep my battle axe in my scroll. But I never would have thought that Naruto knew Fuinjutsu. I wonder how many surprises he is gonna show us now that he's back. If Kakashi was surprised, he hid it well, saying, not a bad idea to use Fuinjutsu to keep a tent in it. Can you show me the hand signs and the kanji so that I can also use it next time? Naruto smiled and said, sure thing sensei, but how will you create? He trailed off as Kakashi gave him an eye smile and uncovered his headband. I see, Naruto said, and started the hand signs. He signed Ushi, Uma, Tori, Hitsuji, Nei, Tatsu, Mi, and Kakashi quickly recorded the technique. Then Naruto opened the scroll from which he had summoned the tent and showed Kakashi the kanji. After Kakashi had recorded that as well, he created a Fuinjutsu scroll immediately and was surprised that it took almost no chakra from his reserves to store the tent in there. He looked at Naruto again with a little more respect than usual. Where did you learn this technique from, Naruto? I don't think Master Jiraiya was particularly fond of Fuinjutsu, he said. Naruto smiled widely and said, that's a long story Kakashi-sensei, maybe another time. Kakashi nodded, understanding that Naruto did not wish to share the knowledge at the time, so he did not press further. Alright, ladies and knuckleheads, today we are going to be working on the first pillar of the ninja arts. Namely, taijutsu. As we know already, taijutsu is the use of hand-to-hand combat, mostly without chakra but, in some cases, using chakra to boost one's strength to an almost inhuman level, he said, slightly inclining his head towards Sakura, who just smiled sweetly at him, causing him to shudder. Taijutsu has hundreds of forms and methods, but most shinobi prefer to learn a handful and refine them rather than try to learn dozens which they can barely use. As of now, the Leaf Village is the second strongest hidden village when it comes to unarmed fighting. The strongest, of course, is the Stone Village due to their solid builds and the ability to take a hit properly, without flinching. However, every form of taijutsu is susceptible to something or the other. The ability to refine the form to an extent that no one can break through, that is the mark of a true master. For example, there are very few people who can break through the gentle fist by their strength alone. A live example, of course, stands in front of us. Kakashi said, reminding them of their first Chunin exams. Naruto smiled slightly. He had met Neji briefly the previous day and was amazed by the way Neji greeted him, almost as friendly as Shikamaru, or even Choji were towards him. Kakashi continued, I will tell you all the forms I know which are used in the Leaf Village as well as some that we do not use but which I have copied from other villages. They include the Hard Fist, 12 Kicks of Fury, Gentle Fist, Dragon Style, Unbreakable Willow, Tiger Style, Snake Fist, Eagle's Claw and many others, which form the base for the other taijutsu forms which evolve past the basic forms by combining two or more of the arts. For example, A person using the unbreakable willow along with the tiger style will be undoubtedly difficult to defeat in unarmed combat alone. However, it takes months to develop a fighting style that is unique to the person creating it. Therefore, if you wish to develop such a unique style, you will have to find the balance on your own. Although I will always be there to guide you, of course. Sakura nodded and said, Lady Tsunade mixed the tiger style and the hard fist for a taijutsu form she calls the steel tiger. She has just recently started to teach it to me, and it is quite difficult from the regular tiger style which I have learned a couple of years ago. Kakashi agreed and said, Alright, I was thinking we could start at the basics, working more on simple punches, jabs, and counters. That way we can see how both of you do. Both of you will fight each other. No chakra boosting your muscles, you don't want to hurt each other. Simply taijutsu, nothing more. Both of them agreed. Begin, he said, and they shot off towards each other even before he finished his second syllable. Sakura reached Naruto and threw a right punch to his left lung while getting in a jab to his right thigh from her left hand. Naruto slid to the right to avoid her punch. Her jab was quite weak due to her right-handed fighting style. Naruto blushed as her left hand touched close to his privates as he had slid to his right instead of left. She blushed furiously too, but pressed the attack even as she twirled around to avoid his left uppercut and land a blow of her own on his left shoulder. Even though she was not boosting her chakra, Naruto felt a slight crack in his left shoulder before the bone started healing automatically. Damn it, Sakura, how did you do that? Are you that much stronger now? Thought Naruto as he slid between her hands to land a light offhand punch on her chest, blushing again as he did so. She slid a few feet back from the pressure on the punch and wondered how much of his strength he had put into that punch. She charged back into the fight and threw twin punches to his face and stomach. Naruto dropped in a perfect split and threw his hands in front of him, blocking her next punch while cartwheeling backwards from the force at the same time. As he jumped back into battle, he aimed a feinted jab at her eyes and threw in a punch to her stomach. She was able to see the feint coming and knocked aside his punch with her right hand while aiming an upper punch towards his right hand, which had gone for the feinted jab. He pulled his hand back to the left at the last moment and caught her hand with his own, pulling her towards him while aiming his left hand towards her heart. She jumped straight up into the air, using his right hand as leverage, and landed behind him, scoring a light punch to the back of his head. Stars exploded in front of Naruto's eyes as he reeled forward and fell a couple of meters away from where she had hit him. He got up slowly, rubbing his head, and said, You do realize that I'm not your enemy, right? She scratched her head sheepishly. I didn't expect that punch to be so hard. Then maybe I need to stop holding back, Naruto said. She looked at him, amazed, and thought, he was holding back all this time? Just how strong is Naruto? Her unasked question was answered when his next punch came thrice as fast and she barely blocked it by crossing her hands in front of her chest. She felt the bone in her right arm crack from the pressure and gaped at Naruto, who was now dancing around her like a professional boxer on his toes. Okay, that's it for now, said Kakashi. He had been observing the fight with his Sharingan and had seen that while Naruto had mostly been using the preferred fighting method of Master Jiraiya, he had been mixing in the Tiger Style and Iron Monk forms as well. He wondered where Naruto had picked up the Iron Monk form, because he had only ever seen one person use it and that person was Naruto's mother. No sense in wondering about it right now. I'll ask Master Jiraiya about it later, he thought as he called them over. Sakura began healing her right arm, still worried that he could crack her arm just by a single punch. Naruto walked over, flexing his shoulder to exercise his recently cracked bone. Kakashi wondered whether he could nominate his team for the International Taijutsu Tournament, with these two cracking each other's bones in light training. He said, that was a good start. I can see that you two perform the styles of Master Jiraiya and Lady Tsunade very well. Naruto, were you using the Iron Monk form there? Yes, sensei, but before you ask, it's a long story connected to the thing we spoke about earlier, Naruto replied carefully. He added, even the pervy sage has promised not to tell anyone until I am ready to reveal it, so there is no use asking him. Kakashi nodded and then started telling them a few tricks he had picked up during his time in the Anbu. The two of them started listening appreciatively, and Kakashi made them work in sets of each style. They went on for the rest of the day, until both of them were sore. Kakashi said, tomorrow, we can start with the real training. Both Naruto and Sakura blanched. The last 3 days had been very hard on both Naruto and Sakura. Kakashi had made them work so hard that for the first time in his life, Naruto had not recovered from his previous day's injuries. This was the result of the chakra weights that Kakashi had brought from Aguromo. Aguromo made only 3 to 4 sets of chakra weights every year, so he had saved 1 set of each for a rainy day. Kakashi only needed to ask and he got them in an instant. The chakra weights were divided into 3 categories, that is, blue, yellow and red. Kakashi explained how the weights work. The blue weights weigh 25 pounds each, the yellow weigh 50 pounds, and the red weigh 100 pounds each. By channeling one's chakra into the weights, one can reduce the weights by a factor of 5. So one red weight will measure 20 pounds if it is being fed chakra. But these are greedy things, and will take as much chakra as you can provide. So if you do not have enough chakra control over your body, you will feel the full weight of the chakra weights. Sakura fell backwards onto the ground and started to heal her injuries with whatever little chakra she had left. Naruto was still standing, if only barely. Sakura looked up at him and gaped at how he was still holding up after the punishment they had just gone through. Each of them was wearing 5 red chakra weights on each leg and 5 yellow and 2 red chakra weights on each of their hands. After having their chakra expended, the students had felt the full weight of the chakra weights on their limbs and had not been able to cope up. Kakashi had seen a glimpse of red entering into Naruto's eyes and had enabled his Sharingan to see if he could spot anything. But the moment he uncovered his Sharingan, the warrior stopped seeing the red glimpse and decided that he had just imagined it. "How are you doing it?" Sakura asked Naruto that evening. Their teacher had gone to collect some dinner from the village since the two were too exhausted to do anything else. "Doing what?" Naruto asked her, totally confused. Sakura presses, "How are you managing to stand at the end of the day with those weights on? If I put it bluntly, I'm just as strong as you. What are you doing differently?" Naruto looked at her surprised. "I don't really know, Sakura. I just seem to have more stamina, I guess." Sakura sighed. Of course, the knucklehead never knew when to give up. That had to be part of the reason at least. Kakashi-sensei had removed their weights for them because they could not even move their muscles. As they debated what to do next, Kakashi appeared next to them, along with Shizune and Ino. The duo looked at the newcomers, surprised to see them, and looked up questioningly at Kakashi-sensei. He answered their expressions, "I went too hard on you guys today. I'm sorry about that. I can't have you falter in the middle of your training. So, I brought Shizune here to check your injuries and heal you. I met Ino on the way and she decided to help as well." Shizune looked at both of them and determined that Sakura needed most of the help because the knucklehead was already regenerating his wounds. She told Ino to help him with the process while she tended to Sakura. Ino looked at Naruto, who had removed his jacket and tank top, sitting bare-chested outside his tent, and felt a slight blush, looking at his ripped figure. He had been scrawny when she last saw him. She went over to his tent and told him to lie down inside so that she could heal his wounds properly. As the two of them started working on the student's wounds, Kakashi slid up to Naruto's tent and said, "I wanted to talk to you, Naruto." "Yeah, Kakashi-sen, say?" Naruto faltered. "I'm sorry to bring it up right now, but it has to be in private. If you could step out for a minute, Ino," he said. Ino nodded, saying, "Just give me a second to close this cut up and I'll be gone. He's mostly healed up anyway." Kakashi nodded. After Ino had left the tent, Kakashi signed Inu, Tatsu, Tori, Hitsuji, Ushi, and said, "Air vacuum jutsu." Looking at Naruto's confused face, he said, "I have to make sure this does not leave the tent." Naruto nodded. "Naruto, have you been using the Kyuubi's chakra today?" Kakashi asked. Naruto frowned. He had not been aware of reaching into that source of power. He looked back up at Kakashi-sensei, totally confused and lost. Kakashi-sensei realized that he did not have any idea about whether he had been using the Kyuubi's chakra and so he did not press the matter. However, he told Naruto, "I'm gonna be using 1 weight less for you on each limb, because I do not want to have anything to do with the Kyuubi on this trip." "I understand, Sensei," Naruto said, exhaustion taking over him. Kakashi released his jutsu and turned to leave when a sudden gust of wind behind him compelled him to turn around. His uncovered eye went wide as he saw Naruto standing in front of him, three red chakra tails lashing out behind him, his red slitted eyes glowing maniacally and a wind Rasengan glowing in his hand. The Kyuubi crooned, "The boy understands, Kakashi. But you were too late. He is mine." Kakashi dived out of the tent just in time to avoid a chakra tail of the Kyuubi from catching him. He looked back up at the demon and had only one thought in his mind. "Oh shit. Everyone get back." Kakashi warned the women who were regarding the situation with varying degrees of wariness and fright. Ino was not sure what she was seeing and Sakura and Shizune were practically riddled with fear. Then it suddenly clicked in Ino's mind and she looked back at Naruto with fear and worry in her eyes. "Naruto," she said softly. The demon fox looked at her with a wicked smile in his eyes, and said, "The boy is not available to answer your call right now. But you can leave a message." With that being said, the Kyuubi dashed towards the women with the wind Rasengan becoming dangerously bigger with every step. Shizune tried to get in between the Kyuubi and the students, who were paralyzed with fear. But the Kyuubi suddenly stopped. He looked down at his left foot, with a bewildered look on his face. But suddenly, the left half of Naruto's face became clear and he roared, "Hold it right there, Kyuubi." The others looked at the now clear part of Naruto, totally amazed at his ability to repel the Kyuubi on his own. Kakashi stared at the evolving form and wondered, how did he do it? How can Naruto be so strong despite being almost unconscious a few moments ago? Then he remembered the chakra tags that Master Jiraiya had given him. The old pervert had said that they would drag out the chakra out of the boy, should he ever be influenced by the Kyuubi. But he had also said that the tags would only work up to the two tails mode. But Kakashi decided to risk it, seeing that Naruto had already taken control over half his body. Meanwhile in the psyche of the seal, Kyuubi was having a hard time digesting the fact that Naruto was able to force partial control over his influence. He wondered whether there was more to Naruto than he had thought. He said, "Do you really think that you can stop me in this state of yours? You were hardly able to stand some time ago." Naruto grinned smugly, causing the Kyuubi to become even more frustrated. "What are you grinning at like that for, boy?" Naruto's smile became much wider and suddenly the Kyuubi's mind realized what had happened. Even when Naruto had been in one or two tails mode, his body had regenerated to a point where it was almost impossible to cut him and expected to bleed. The Kyuubi had been sending all the chakra possible outside its psyche, to take control of the boy, and in that haste, he had also healed the boy instantly, regenerating not only his body, but also his chakra supply. Naruto grinned as the Kyuubi mulled over things as they were at the moment. He thought, I could kill one or maybe two of the weaklings outside before Naruto takes back the control, or I could try to force Naruto back somehow and then possess his body again. No, that won't work. The boy's will is too strong. Then what can I do to? But the beast had wasted too much time thinking. Faster than anyone could see, Kakashi substituted himself for the small log of wood in front of Naruto and slapped two of his chakra tags to Naruto Kyuubi's forehead. No. The demon cried out as he felt his energy being drawn away from him and tried to take Naruto's body back into his control, but it was a losing battle. Naruto wrested control away from the Kyuubi and for good measure, sent a Rasen Shuriken in his psyche through the seal to the Kyuubi. It was enough to distract the orange fox for a second, enough for Naruto to take total control into his own hands. Naruto shuddered as he sat slowly onto the ground, not knowing that he was still bare-chested. Kakashi darted into his tent and got his jacket out for him. Naruto slipped it on thankfully and asked, "What just happened, Kakashi-sensei? Why did the 9 tails come out?" Ino gasped, her suspicions confirmed. Kakashi looked at her and it was the graveness of the situation that kept her from pointing at Naruto and demanding an explanation. She looked at Kakashi-sensei and nodded. All of them sat together, Shizune still healing some minor wounds on Sakura's biceps. Kakashi said, "Ino, this will not go outside this group." Ino nodded fervently. He continued, "Naruto is indeed the Jinchuriki of the 9-tailed fox. This is only known to the civilian and ninja adults of the Hidden Leaf Village. There was a reason why children weren't told about him, but most of their parents did not want to let their children near him anyway. Your parents must have also said the same." Ino nodded again, tears forming in her eyes. She looked at Naruto and said, "I'm so sorry, Naruto. If I had known." Naruto interrupted her, "If you had known, You probably would have hated me more at that time, for being the monster that almost destroyed the hidden leaf. As a kid, I was always being beaten up by drunk civilians and other people for being a monster. Nobody gave me a chance to prove my worth in this village, until I met Iruka-sensei. But I survived through it and made friends such as Sakura, Shikamaru, Choji, Kiba, Kakashi-sensei and Sasuke as well. He faltered. Then he looked at her determinedly and continued, and I don't feel bad about being a Jinchuriki. It tells me that the fourth Hokage thought that I would be brave enough to cope with it, and that makes me feel very proud. I have subdued the Kyuubi for the first time now, but now that I have done it, I have no doubt I will do it again. Ino looked at him again, and then hugged him. His arms fell to his sides, stunned at her reaction and more than mildly embarrassed. Sakura looked annoyed at this sudden affectionate display but also worried and relieved that Naruto had repelled the Kyuubi on his own. Well, mostly, considering Kakashi's help. Shizune was happy to see that her self-appointed brother had become so mature and strong. And Kakashi-sensei gave Naruto his eye smile. The rest of the week went by normally, with Ino and Shizune dropping by once more, this time to have lunch with the team. Sakura noticed that Ino kept glancing towards Naruto, but she guessed that it must have been because of the Kyuubi and decided not to talk about it yet. Kakashi-sensei had picked up their training again but was making sure not to tax Naruto too much. He had his Sharingan out every day, making sure that he did not spot a single bit of Kyuubi's chakra in Naruto's body, apart from the stomach where the demon was sealed. In the entire week, they had grasped the basics of all the taijutsu forms Kakashi had taught them, learned a few ninjutsu of the wind, lightning and water affinities. Naruto had displayed proficiency in wind and lightning, but could not grasp water jutsus at all. Kakashi took a guess that the Kyuubi, being a fire spirit, must have interfered with this ability. Sakura could handle water and lightning well, although she was weaker in lightning jutsus than Naruto. Kakashi thought, they made some amazing progress this week. If they had been training like this for even just a year or so more, I'm pretty sure they could surpass their teachers, the Sannin. It was finally time to head back to the Leaf Village. As the two started packing up their bags, Kakashi stopped them. Naruto raised his eyebrow at Kakashi, who explained, I'm bending the rules. We are going to have a test of what you learned in this past week so that I can sum up your skills all at once. Both of them nodded at him. He took them to a part of the ground further away from where they usually trained. He said, as you can see, I have marked a circle of this ground to use for this test. You cannot leave this marked circle, nor can I. Anyone who leaves it even by mistake will be disqualified, and will not be able to get their hands on one of them. Sakura looked confused but Naruto just groaned knowingly, as Kakashi removed 2 bells from his pocket. He said, you have until noon to get the bells. And Naruto, I've finished reading that book so that trick won't work again. I wrote half of the next book, shot back Naruto. Kakashi stammered, well then, let's just make that a disqualifying offense this time, shall we? Naruto just smirked evilly at him, and he shuddered. He swallowed his fear and said, begin. Both of them just stood there. Sakura looked at Naruto and nodded. Naruto raised his hands and signed, multi-shadow clone jutsu. Scores of clones shot out running around randomly, until the traps started showing up. Naruto clones were strung up by lasso ropes, fell into pits, coughed as poison fogs shot into the air and exploded as hidden kunai flung into them. Kakashi gaped at them as his week-long efforts were destroyed immediately. He tried to calm himself but couldn't stop from almost crying as his traps were destroyed in seconds. Naruto and Sakura smirked at him, Naruto saying, shall we begin now, sensei? Kakashi stared at them, totally dumbfounded. Then he asked, what gave it away? Sakura said, apart from the fact that we couldn't leave the circle? We saw you digging something here today at dawn. I told Naruto and he decided that you must be setting up something. We know you too well now, sensei. Kakashi nodded wearily, feeling quite old all of a sudden. But he got no more time to relax as Naruto suddenly attacked him with a ferocity that he never would have expected from him. He punched and jabbed and kicked with all the fierceness of an animal and strength of a demon. Kakashi saw that his eyes had become red and slitted. He asked, what the hell are you doing, Naruto? Naruto spoke and his voice contained the growl of the Kyuubi, you told me to take the bells, didn't you? And the only way I can do so is to come at you with lethal force. Kakashi wondered whether the Kyuubi had possessed him again and tried to get his headband up, but it was too late. Kakashi was suddenly lifted up into the air and flung to his side. He bounced onto the ground once and then cartwheeled back to his feet. He looked up to see what had happened and to his surprise, saw Sakura standing with one hand holding a bell and the other in a V pose. And Naruto stood next to her with the other bell in his hand, his eyes completely cerulean blue and smirking at Kakashi. As realization dawned up Kakashi, he asked, "The whole thing was just an act?" Naruto grinned, "Of course, it was. As if I would ever hurt you, sensei. I just figured that if I attacked you hard enough, you would forget about Sakura." Kakashi scratched his head, embarrassed and said, "You guys know me too well to make this a valid test. You pass, for what it's worth." And he thought in his mind, "You've even surpassed me now. Keep it up and become the heroes of the future." As they headed back to the village, they met Lee, Neji and Tenten along with Guy-sensei. "Hey everyone," Naruto said boisterously, as they joined groups and headed to the village. "Back from a mission?" he asked, to which Lee and Neji nodded. Guy-sensei looked at them and said, "We had gone to the Land of Air to help the Sand Ninjas with a rescue mission. Our skills were specially requested because of our team's speed." Kakashi asked, "What was the mission?" Guy replied, "Some technicians had gone missing from the Land of Air in the past few weeks. It was our mission along with a sand team to find their trail and rescue them. Our secondary objective was to eliminate the threat, if any." Lee and Neji nodded appreciatively at that while Tenten sighed. Naruto noticed their expressions and asked, "What happened? Were there many enemies?" Lee nodded, while Neji explained, "The kidnappings were conducted by a group of rogues who wanted to use technology to try to use jutsu by creating jutsu circuits. They had already reached the final stages when we stopped them." Naruto didn't seem appeased, so Neji continued, "Circuits are fragile things. Jutsu circuits even more so. A simple water jutsu was enough to negate the circuits that the bandits had strapped to their hands." Naruto nodded, remembering that Pervy Sage had taught him about circuits, but he had not paid that much attention at the time. As they reached the village gates, Rado and Genma looked at them and said, "Identification?" Everyone stopped, surprised and incredulous. Kakashi said, "What's the matter, Genma? Why are you asking for identification from us? You know us very well." Genma nodded, but kept his guard. The Hokage just received word from the case cage that a group of robbers have gained a scroll from a tomb of a disciple of the Sage of Six Paths. It allows the robbers to transform into anyone they have ever seen before, and that the transformation is so perfect that not even an elite ninja can make out the difference. Kakashi and Guy looked at each other, then suddenly sprung two kunai out and threw them at each other. All the students looked surprised at this exchange and tensed in anticipation. Kakashi asked sternly, "What was the first thing Might Guy ever said to me in the academy, after he and I passed and became genin?" Guy responded, "I challenge you, Kakashi. You cannot match the power of the handsome devil of the Leaf Village." Despite the grave situation, Guy could not help but blush in embarrassment as he said the words. Both Kakashi and Guy relaxed. Naruto had to stuff his fist in his mouth to stop laughing, while Guy's team did not react, having heard this sort of stuff way too many times. Guy grumbled, "Of all the things you could ask me, you had to ask that?" Kakashi said, "I had to be certain." But his eyes gave his amusement away. Everyone relaxed and Genma allowed them to continue. As they made their way to Ninja Ops, Guy and Kakashi fell back a bit, talking to themselves in hushed tones. Naruto couldn't help but try to overhear them, but Kakashi had used the air vacuum jutsu to keep him out of earshot. They reached Ninja Ops to find Lady Tsunade standing outside, waiting for them. She started talking as soon as they reached, "It's good that I found you guys together. I have a mission for you. Get in the office. I'm waiting for another person." They obliged, Shun shining straight into her office. After a couple of minutes, Naruto started fidgeting and Sakura gave him a light pounding on the head to keep him from doing something stupid. Just as things were getting nervous, Tsunade stepped into the room along with the forms of Asuma, Ino, Shikamaru and Choji. She looked at everyone as she sat in her chair. As she was about to talk, she received a call. "What is it?" She yelled into the phone before calming down considerably. "Sorry, Gaara, I'm a bit on edge right now. I have 3 teams in my office right now. Want me to switch to loudspeaker mode?" He must have obliged because she did. As you must know by now, A group of robbers have desecrated the tomb of a legendary ninja who was a student of the Sage of Six Paths. This student was a master of disguise, and the scrolls hidden in the tomb have helped the robbers achieve the same transformation skills. This is extremely infuriating for the Land of Air, because the student was from our country and it is a matter of personal pride for us. The gang which stole the scroll was last seen in the Land of Greens and is quite large too. I am sending 3 teams to the Land of Greens. I wish to take the help of your teams as well, since these robbers could be anyone. You need to find and eliminate these robbers. Show no mercy. Gaara's cold and slow voice showed that he was deeply insulted by this bold show and was going to go to any extent to stop this immediately. Naruto cracked his knuckles happily, but Kakashi looked at Sakura and they nodded at once. Kakashi said, "With all due respect, I would like our team to be replaced with Team 8. Everyone looked at him in surprise. Then they saw the look in his eyes and the tattered clothes of Naruto and Sakura. They realized where Kakashi was coming from. Lady Tsunade looked at them and asked, "Why Team 8, Kakashi?" He nodded, knowing she would ask. Team 8 is a tracking specialist team. Shino's bugs, Kiba's nose and Hinata's eyes cannot be fooled. I have no doubt that they would be a much better choice. Even if we have a better combat ability, they compensate with it because of their respective clans' hidden jutsus. The Hokage understood, and then Kakashi continued, "Besides, I wish to speak to in private, with something concerning Naruto." Tsunade replied, "Don't worry about that, Shizune told me everything. However, we will need to talk to you privately, Ino." Ino nodded, and her teammates looked at her. She shook her head and they understood. Lady Tsunade continued, addressing the rest of them, "All of you, go and get some rest. Pack your bags and gear. You will meet me at the gates tomorrow at 7 a.m. Rendezvous with the hidden sand ninja at the Land of Greens. Gaara and I will give you a password with which you will recognize each other." "Understood?" "Yes, milady," all the shinobi said, except for Kakashi, Naruto and Sakura. The Hokage dismissed everyone but for the 3 of them and Ino. Ino looked at the Sannin and said, "A blood oath, right?" Lady Tsunade nodded sadly. "It is necessary, to preserve the knowledge until it is time to let it be known." Ino asked, "And what will the penalty be?" The Sannin replied, "Memory loss should be sufficient." Ino nodded, lowering her top slightly to inscribe the kanji for the blood oath on her chest. Naruto couldn't help but peek and got a small nosebleed. Ino didn't notice, but Sakura sure did. As Naruto clutched his head in pain, Ino continued, "I, Ino Yamanaka, of the village hidden in the leaves, pledged to keep the secret of Naruto being the Jinchuriki of the 9 tails from anyone in the world except those in front of me right now, unless it is somehow required. If I should convey this information to anyone, then I shall lose all memory of the taboo subjects." Lady Tsunade nodded at her, and dismissed her. Ino looked at Naruto once before leaving. Naruto nodded slightly towards her and gave her an encouraging smile which she returned. As she left, all eyes returned to the Hokage, who said, "Now, I want to know everything in detail." "What happened?" Kakashi explained how his training regime had caused Naruto to exhaust all his chakra, using the Kyuubi's chakra, and it had led to the beast taking over. As he went on, Tsunade's eyes narrowed. She thought, so, Minato's seal was not as strong as we thought it. It is already cracking slowly, and if we do not do anything soon, we may as well have signed our own death warrants. She looked up at them and said, "Now that you guys aren't going on the mission, I want both of you to rest for 2 days. After that, I will take your test. Both of you are dismissed." Kakashi, hang on. Naruto and Sakura took their leave, and Kakashi looked at the Hokage. Tsunade sighed and said, "Another seal will have to be applied over Minato's seal, Kakashi. I do not want to take any chances of letting what happened 16 years earlier repeat again." He nodded, thinking of the same thing. "However, we must make sure that the seal is evenly matched. You know that Orochimaru had once put a 5-pronged seal over the 8-trigram seal, right?" The Sannin nodded. "Jiraiya told me about it interfering even with the boy's own chakra. But we'll find another seal. Most possibly the divine zodiac animal seal." Kakashi's eye widened. As the 2 days passed, Naruto and Sakura recuperated. Naruto, of course, was back to full energy in a day, but Sakura took some extra time to heal. However, after the 2 days were over, both the students were ready to fight their Hokage. The Hokage called them over to Ninja Ops and told them that their match would take place where they had done their training. Both Naruto and Sakura agreed, having become familiar with the layout of the ground now. Well then, it seems like it's finally showtime, kid. Tsunade said. Naruto grinned back at her and said, "It's not gonna be like last time, Grandma. You won't even be able to touch my forehead this time." "We'll see about that," Tsunade shot back. They reached the ground and Tsunade took off her overcoat. Naruto managed to somehow maintain his concentration on the upcoming fight, which was hard considering the two huge distractions in front of him. Sakura, on the other hand, was totally calm and focused, as though she had done this 100 times before. Which wasn't really far from the truth. As the Hokage said, "Start," both of them charged at her. A frontal assault? She thought with a snort. They were a decade away from challenging here face to face in taijutsu. But as Sakura took a punch from the legendary sucker, she exploded into a cloud of white smoke. A substitution? Or was it Naruto's shadow clone? Thought Tsunade as the smoke cleared. She saw a log in front of her and realized it was a substitution. Naruto charged in with a mix of hard fist and iron monk and her eyes widened, seeing the moves of her once friend come alive in front of her. The Hokage wondered where her apprentice was, not having known where the substitution was done from. She was pushed backward, Naruto guiding her and keeping himself clear of her attacks. Tsunade, meanwhile, constantly searched for Sakura. She found the young kunoichi near the edge of the ground, staring intently at the two of them. Just as she wondered why Sakura was not attacking, she succeeded in driving Naruto back towards the log which she had previously seen Sakura substitute for. Suddenly the log burst into another cloud of smoke and Sakura emerged, her fully muscle-boosted punch catching Tsunade straight in the jaw. As the Hokage went flying into the trees, she saw that she was flying straight towards Sakura, still standing at the edge of the ground, looking at her triumphantly, before Sakura ended the transformation and turned into Naruto, who pulled Tsunade's hand hard and flung her back into the middle of the ground where Naruto and Sakura were waiting. The Naruto at edge of the ground disappeared in plumes of white smoke and Tsunade rolled to her feet. So, she thought, the Sakura at the edge of the forest was a shadow clone of Naruto's. The real Sakura was the one who I punched. She transformed into a log, giving me any ninja's first conception that she had substituted. As I searched for Sakura, Naruto's plan was to initially push me towards the edge where I would see Sakura, which was Naruto's shadow clone, and then guide me back to the log where the real Sakura would transform back to normal and clock me in the jaw. What a flawless and perfectly executed plan. Did they plan this from before or did they do it just now? But she couldn't think any further before Naruto and Sakura charged again, this time for earnest. As Sakura was hit by the Sannin one more time, this time much harder, she went flying backwards towards Naruto, who caught her arm, rotated her in mid-air and sent her flying back towards the Hokage at twice the speed. The Sannin felt as shocked as she looked. To take the inertia of my attack and use it against me? This is the first time I have ever seen something like this. Even Sakura bawled out, "What the hell, Naruto?" as she flew straight into a Tsunade, readying herself for a right thrust kick. But at the last moment, Sakura again exploded into a log. Tsunade did not pause to think but splintered the log into tiny pieces with her kick. Well, it was a real log this time and she barely dodged as Naruto came up in front of her and his punch caught her in the shoulder instead of the jaw. She could not believe herself. Naruto throws her against me. She yells at him, then substitutes herself knowing that this time I will break it apart, only to have it distract me while Naruto comes up behind the log and attacks me. And all of this without uttering a single word. Amazing. As she jabbed Naruto in the stomach, he exploded into a cloud. What now? Tsunade thought desperately. She heard a small rumbling in the ground and barely rolled aside as Naruto came up from the ground and his fist still caught her right leg, which cracked from the sheer amount of force he put into his punch. While she sent chakra into her leg to repair her bone, she suddenly felt that she was missing something. She realized what it was when it knocked her to the ground in front of her. It was Sakura, who had punched the Sannin straight in the small of the back. As the Sannin dodged their blows, she looked for a way out of this and saw a glimmer of hope. She transformed into a log, taking a page out of their book. That will put them off, she thought. Sure enough, Sakura immediately turned and began to scan the area, but Naruto had other plans. He kicked Tsunade in the ribs hard enough to destabilize the transformation. She rolled away, shocked. She looked at him questioningly, and he spoke for the first time that day. "I can smell you." "Alright, that's it for me," the Sannin said. "You have both done wonderfully in the teamwork test. I honestly could not keep up with the pace of your attacks and the perfect coordination that you kids showed." "Well done." Naruto and Sakura smiled and high-fived each other. "Well, a short rest, and then round 2, Naruto," Tsunade said, while thinking, if he's alone, he can't pull these tricks against me. But then he has his shadow clones. I better watch out. Around 5 minutes later, both, the Sannin and the Genin were standing in front of each other. This time, Sakura was the one to call it. "Begin." Naruto and Tsunade both rushed towards each other, Tsunade's hands glowing with the electricity of the Ranshinsho. As she touched Naruto, his hands flailed and she frowned, not expecting him to fall for her jutsu so easily. But suddenly, his hand swung out in twin punches and he boxed her ears, quite literally. The Sannin was unnerved now. She started to ask him, but Naruto said, "I asked Sakura to teach me the counter to the Ranshinsho." She nodded at his intelligence and stopped the flow of chakra into her hands to avoid wasting any more chakra. Naruto grinned at her and started his form of Iron Monk style. The Sannin dodged his attacks, having seen them before, but he then started randomly mixing in the snake fist style as well. She hopped back 2 steps, signing, "Earth style, Stone Claws Jutsu." 7 sturdy claws of stone broke out of the earth to trap Naruto, who quickly signed, "Lightning style, Stone Cracker Jutsu." The talons broke into several pieces. As she looked at him, he said, "Kakashi-sensei taught it to me last week." She nodded before signing again, "Wind style, Windscreen." The master medic sent out a huge blast of compressed air chakra towards Naruto, who substituted himself for another log of wood. He appeared to the right of Tsunade and rushed in, preparing a Rasengan in his right hand. "Thank God that I can finally do it without a clone," he told himself. During his trip with Jiraiya, Naruto had finally learned to mold his chakra into the Rasengan without using a clone. The solution had been simple. As the pervy sage had suggested, Naruto's chakra flowed counterclockwise, while he had molded his chakra clockwise. The old sage had said, if you learn to mold your chakra in the direction opposite of what you do now, your chakra will not destabilize because it will not have any opposing force to hold it back. So it had taken a few days, but Naruto had managed to finally create a one-handed Rasengan on his own. Now, Naruto used that attack, keeping it behind his back the entire time. The female Sannin looked at his run, determining that he probably had some shuriken or kunai in his hands, not knowing about his new ability. As he reached closer, she prepared herself for whatever he might throw at her. Her eyes widened in shock as she saw the brightly shining ball of chakra thrust between her arms straight into her solar plexus. "Rasengan!" roared Naruto, as the ball shredded her skin and flesh and sent her flying backwards. Luckily, Lady Tsunade was not a legendary ninja for nothing. She had already sent her chakra to block her stomach from most of the attack. But she remembered that Kabuto had done the same, and it had still affected him. She had only one option at the moment, and although she hated herself for doing it, she had no choice. She got up unsteadily, put her hands together and gathered her chakra. Sakura frowned and then realized what she was doing. She gasped. Tsunade began to glow in a reddish aura. She intoned, "Reserve Seal Release. Ninja Arts. Meiotic Regeneration." Naruto also stared at her as his Rasengan's damage was repaired in an instant. Tsunade charged at him, fully regenerated, but he was already planning his next move. As she got closer to the point of no return, he spawned a single shadow clone without hand signs. The Sannin stopped and stared at him, eyes wide. The shadow clone jutsu was an A-rank jutsu. Although he had been using it for quite some time, she didn't have any idea that he would be able to do it without hand signs. Then Naruto smirked at her, his shadow clone having bought him the distraction he needed. He quickly signed and shouted, "Wind style, Cyclone Spikes Jutsu." 15 spikes of sharpened air chakra flew towards Tsunade and skewered her. Although she managed to dodge 8 of them, 3 of them fully hit her and blasted back through her body, and the rest nicked her body and the arms and legs. But she healed even as she charged towards him and his shadow clone sacrificed itself for him. as her muscle-boosted punch almost went through the body of the clone. As he hopped back, he went to sign again, but she flung a kunai at him and broke his concentration. She leapt ahead for a high kick. High kicks were considered dangerous because if the opponent got around them, the user was particularly susceptible to being attacked from the back. But the female Sannin didn't bother, knowing that she would regenerate and desperate to get an advantage over Naruto. But Naruto simply took the kick on his shoulder and smirked as the large bruise on his shoulder under his jacket began to heal immediately. She pressed the attack but was unable to land any blows at him while he constantly jabbed her and punched her, causing her to sustain the meiotic regeneration for more than half an hour. As she felt her chakra begin to ebb away, she paused. Naruto stopped, thinking that this was some ploy, but she put her hands together and ended the regeneration jutsu. He stared at her until she called him and Sakura over. They jogged over and she said, panting slightly, "I have never seen such level of teamwork and individual skill before. You guys passed the test." Naruto grumbled, "Not fair, Grandma Tsunade. I was hardly getting started." Tsunade blanched. As Naruto and Sakura reached back to the village with Lady Tsunade, they were asked for identification again. Tsunade gave them her ID and they nodded. They looked at the other two, but Tsunade said, "I'll vouch for them, because I just fought them and I know for sure that they are the real deal." Rado and Genma gaped at her in amazement, as she passed them, smirking slightly, before remembering that she had lost. That sobered her up pretty quick. As they reached the office, Tsunade took out their reports and told them, "I am extremely impressed with your skills, both individual and as a team. I am putting you back on regular rotation duty from Monday. Now, I'm going to make some changes in your report. Naruto, I know everything about Sakura, her jutsus, her strength and her weapon skills. But I have never seen you using those jutsus before. I will need to make note of them in your records." Naruto looked at her honestly and said, "Grandma Tsunade, I would rather like it if you could keep the ninjutsu which I used, and the Iron Monk style away from my record. At least until I feel confident enough to share how I acquired them." Tsunade frowned and he added hastily, "I have already told the pervy sage to keep mum about it, so you won't get anything out of him." She said, "But what is it that you do not wish to talk about yet?" Naruto smiled sheepishly and said, "I don't want to get people's hopes up before I become a chunin or a jonin." She nodded, suddenly understanding that he wanted to keep the secret because he was still a genin by rank. However, that shouldn't have stopped him from telling her. He's hiding something large, Tsunade thought, but didn't press the matter. Sakura was looking quizzically at Naruto as though she couldn't understand something about him. He fidgeted uncomfortably under their stares. Finally, Tsunade decided, "I will make a record of your taijutsu improvements, except for the Iron Monk style. And tell me which jutsus you learned from Kakashi, I can put them in the reports as well, can't I?" Naruto nodded and Sakura said, "I also learned a few new jutsus, milady. I think you can add them to my reports too." The Sannin agreed, "I need to talk to you privately, Naruto. So I'll get Sakura's report done first." He looked at her, wondering what she wanted to talk about. Sakura stepped forward. The Hokage opened Sakura's report and looked up at her expectantly. Sakura hesitated for a second and then started speaking. "I learned mostly lightning style and water style jutsus. Kakashi sensei knew that I have an affinity for lightning because of my mastery of the Ranshinsho." Tsunade smiled slightly while Sakura continued, "Also, I'm basically an earth chakra user. So water chakra was easier for me to learn as well. But I have absolutely no chance in using wind or fire chakra." The Sannin looked at her and said, "Well, everyone has their own affinities. For you to have 3 types of chakra affinities is a huge accomplishment. You will easily be able to make it to Jonin." Sakura blushed slightly from the praise and continued, "I learnt the following water-style jutsus from sensei. The water style: Vortex Jutsu, Giant Vortex Jutsu, Water Wall and the Water Dragon Jutsu." She again blushed and looked at her feet as Tsunade openly gaped at her. Finally, Tsunade managed to open her mouth and said weakly, "You learnt the Water Dragon Jutsu in 1 week?" Sakura nodded. She continued, "I also learnt the following lightning-style jutsus from Kakashi-sensei. The lightning style: Lightning Trident, the Stone Cracker Jutsu, the Spark Darts Jutsu and the Lightning Lance Spears Jutsu." The younger medic looked at her teacher, mollified by the look on Tsunade's face. The only angry thought in the Sanin's head was, what the hell is Kakashi playing at? Sakura added, oh, I forgot. I also mastered the Earth style, Mud Clone Jutsu. Sheesh. Tsunade thought, this is too much. But she didn't show it anymore and looked at Sakura with a healthy amount of respect and pride. She said, I am so stunned right now that I can't think of anything. How did you master so many jutsus in 1 week? Sakura scratched her head sheepishly, saying, well, I wouldn't say master. Kakashi-sensei has placed all my lightning release jutsus at C rank or B rank. He has told me that I will need to improve the techniques a lot more, before I can use them at which rank they really are. She looked slightly uncomfortable saying it, but Tsunade suddenly understood. This week had not been devoted to training in the arts they had developed. It was to teach them a flurry of new techniques so that they could improve the techniques on the go, during missions or other normal training. She heaved a sigh of relief and said, and what about the water-style jutsus? Are they at a similar level? Sakura nodded, saying, of all the water-style jutsus, I can only use the vortex jutsu at its intended rank. My other jutsus are again at C rank or B rank. My water dragon is absolutely minuscule right now, even if it is powerful. She looked at Naruto as she said that and he winced. Tsunade looked at him questioningly and Naruto and he explained, I told her to try it on me. It broke my back with its force. If it was at its full level, I probably would have been dead. Tsunade glared at him. What the hell were you thinking, Baka? How could you do something so stupid? He looked back at her, saying, you know how fast I regenerate. Also Sakura was there to immediately heal my wound. So it didn't really matter. It matters to me, you stupid knucklehead. And if you ever try something like this again, I'll give orders to let you die. Is that understood? He blanched at her expression and nodded fervently. The Sannin calmed down a little, and looked back at Sakura. How could you even carry out such a risky plan, Sakura? Did you not know that the Water Dragon Jutsu is an A- rank jutsu, bordering on S rank, depending on the strength of the user? Sakura looked down again, unable to say anything. Tsunade forced herself to calm down completely, before continuing, be that as it may, what's done is done. I can only request you not to do it again. Is that clear? Both of the students nodded mutely, before Tsunade said, I am putting your new jutsus at C rank, Sakura, because I have not seen them myself. As you improve under my watch, I will update the records again. Sakura said, yes milady. Tsunade looked at her, questioning her expression. Sakura said with a small blush, I also learnt the Heavenly Fingers Genjutsu from Kakashi-sensei. Tsunade again gaped at Sakura. She could not believe her ears. The Heavenly Fingers Jutsu was an A-rank genjutsu which affected the senses of smell, touch and hearing all at once. To learn it in a week was unheard of. She grinned lecherously, remembering its effects, saying, I will need to see it for myself later, Sakura. I can't be sure whether you have got it correctly. Sakura looked at her in confusion, saying, but how will you? And then she realized why Tsunade was grinning. She blushed more and murmured her assent. Tsunade said, okay now, is there anything else? Sakura shook her head, and the Sannin said, then you may leave now. Sakura took her leave, looking at Naruto once before she left, who gave her a big thumbs up, and a smile. She smiled back at him encouragingly as she left. Tsunade looked at Naruto with a grin and said, I know you do not want to discuss the secret of the Iron Monk style and some of your techniques right now. But as the Hokage, it is my duty to know the powers and abilities of all the shinobi in the village. I have to know about it, even if I have to swear a blood oath not to share it with anyone. Naruto looked at her carefully before nodding. She made a blood oath immediately, and he began to tell her about his trip. The Hokage looked up at Naruto in astonishment, before hiding the look behind feigned neutrality. Her back slumped. She had to hand it to him, the boy was a prodigy. If he had not wasted his time playing tricks when he was younger, he would definitely be a Jonin by now, and Hokage in a few years' time. As it stood now, he was stronger than anyone else in the Hidden Leaf, and probably the other villages too. And that was without having the Kyuubi sealed within him. Naruto said, so that's all there is to it. Do you understand now? Why the pervy sage and I don't want anyone to know yet? She nodded gravely, before saying, don't worry, I'll make sure to keep it safe. Not that I have a choice now, with my blood oath and all. Naruto said, can I go now? The Sannin looked at him, her expression clearing and said, not yet. You still had to give me the rest of your records. He remembered that they were here primarily to update their records. Oh yeah, he said. I learnt the same lightning jutsus that Sakura learnt, he said, to make it easier rather than naming all of them again. She nodded, creating the record immediately. He continued, I also learnt these wind-styled jutsus from Kakashi-sensei. They are, the wind screen jutsu, giant wind gale, impervious wind defense jutsu, four winds scattering jutsu and the air vacuum jutsu. I can use all of them at their intended rank. The Hokage looked at him, stunned. Those were 3 A-rank jutsus, 1 S-rank jutsu and 1 B-rank jutsu. She asked, you can use the impervious wind defense at S-rank? How? He nodded, saying, I asked Kakashi-sensei and he said I was proficient enough. And I used shadow clones to decrease the time and increase the amount of training I could do. The female Sannin updated the record and said, go up to the roof and wait for me. He looked at her, confused, but went up nevertheless. Tsunade fell back into her chair, suddenly feeling every one of her 40 years. Her eyebrows twitched at the personal deception, and she got back up in a hurry, wanting to see the technique for herself. As she reached up on the roof, Tsunade activated a minor genjutsu which could allow her to see chakra outside the body in different colors. She said, I want to see the impervious wind defense, Naruto. He nodded, focusing his chakra for the jutsu. Tori, Ushi, Hitsuji, Uma, Mi, Ne, I, Saru, I, Tatsu, Hitsuji, Ne, Tora, Inu, Mi, Tatsu. Wind style. Impervious wind defense. Naruto intoned. The watchful eyes of Tsunade, coupled with the genjutsu, just made out the outline of chakra rotating outside his body in an extremely fast clockwise direction. She marveled at the speed that it was going at. The Sannin decided to test the density and speed as she threw a kunai at Naruto, who didn't even move. The kunai not only bounced back from the shield Naruto had created, but it also flung itself back at Tsunade with twice the speed she had thrown it at. The Hokage barely dodged her own weapon, which still nicked her in the left shoulder as it flew past, landing 7 buildings away from their building. Holy shit, Tsunade thought as she saw the speed of the steel missile. That is one amazing jutsu. I never even imagined that Kakashi would know it. She thought, deciding to ask Kakashi how and where he had learned it. Naruto, you can stop the jutsu now, she said. Naruto relaxed, letting his chakra stop its circular motion. Are we done, Grandma Tsunade? He asked. She nodded and said, you may go, Naruto. But if you happen to find Kakashi, tell him that I sent for him. Naruto nodded his understanding and took off. Tsunade went back to the office. Just then, she saw Guy walking in towards Ninja Ops and wondered when his team had returned, and where the rest of them were. Guy knocked and she said, enter. Guy came in, and seeing the expression on his face, Tsunade got worried. What is it, Guy? Guy looked at her, with a dark expression in his eyes. She could make out that he had been crying recently. He said, the transformation scrolls were not the only scrolls the robbers had taken. They had taken a number of taijutsu scrolls as well. We eliminated them, of course, but Lee took a number of hits from a person who was using the resonating palms technique. Tsunade's eyes shot up in anger and shock, as she roared, what did you just say? He flinched, but met her gaze and nodded. The Sannin forced her anger down, remembering unpleasantly that it was this very form of taijutsu that took away her beloved brother. We captured some of them alive, milady. The one who used the resonating palms is with them. There at the interrogation ops, Guy said. Tsunade looked up with steely eyes and said, lead the way. Guy shook his head, I'm here for another reason, milady. Lee was fighting the guy who used the resonating palms. He is intensive care right now. Suddenly, Tsunade understood why tears had been forming around Guy's eyes. He had witnessed the absolute destruction of his student in front of him. She got up with a speed that even left him blinking, and was gone before he knew it. They reached the hospital at a speed which would have left any shinobi stunned. As they entered intensive care, Tsunade saw Shizune making chakra cuts on Lee's body to separate pieces of his skin where they had been corroded. She put on a mask and entered the room. Why was I not informed of this operation, Shizune? She asked dangerously. Shizune paled underneath her mask and hurriedly replied, stammering, I'm sorry, milady. I thought that you would not be able to con, concentrate, given what has happened over the years. Tsunade leant over, checking the wounds. She then began using two carefully designed chakra scalpels to remove all the skin over the corroded areas of Lee's body. Then she initiated her meiotic regeneration jutsu and poured her chakra into Lee's body. The fine-tuned jutsu was passed from her body to Lee's body and his internal organs, which were mashed up, starting repairing themselves. The master medic's body began to slump as the jutsu wore her down, but Shizune put her hands on her mentor's shoulders, pouring her own chakra into the female Sannin. The operation took several hours, but they were able to completely regenerate Lee's body to an almost pristine state. Both the medics slumped into chairs as they took food pills to regain some of their chakra. Guy walked up to them carefully, with Neji and Tenten trailing behind him. Tsunade looked up at him and smiled slightly. He burst into tears, falling at the Hokage's feet, who brought him back up and hugged him. Neji and Tenten looked relieved, and even Tenten cried slowly but happily. Neji, who had become more open in the years after being defeated by Naruto, put his arm around Tenten's shoulders and comforted her. "How is he now, milady?" Neji asked. She looks at him and said, "We were able to restore him completely. We may also have improved his body a little, given the fact that we had to burn away the little bit of fat that he had underneath his skin. But he will need a month of therapy to get back in shape. After that, we will add him back into rotation. Can I see him, Lady Hokage?" Guy asked. She nodded, saying, "But he won't be talking now. We have given him a strong anesthetic. He won't wake up until tomorrow." Guy nodded and went in the room. A moment later the nurse came rushing out, saying, "Milady, please come in right away." Tsunade rushed back in to see Lee with his eyes open, smiling at Guy-sensei. She calmed down, but thought, how did he wake up so quickly? Lee spoke, "I am sorry, Guy-sensei. I was weak and caused everyone so much pain. I promise that I will do better next time." Tears silently came streaming down Guy's cheeks as he said, "I will train you so well that you will never need the hospital again, Lee." He lightly embraced Lee and then went back out, allowing Neji and Tenten to come in. They took one look at him and Tenten started crying again. Lee clasped Neji's hand and said, "I will get well soon and then we shall spar again, Neji." Neji smiled in spite of himself, and said, "I look forward to it, my friend." Naruto sighed in contentment as he slurped down his ramen. He and Iruka-sensei had come to Ichiraku's to celebrate Naruto's mastery of the longsword and the staff blade. As they ate their ramen, Naruto suddenly asked, "Hey, sensei? Can you tell me how the Jonin exams work?" Iruka wondered what had gotten into him suddenly, but decided to tell him. He said, "The Jonin trials are quite different from the Chunin exams. They are each held within their own village, with the village elders and the Jonin council debating on who should be promoted or not. There are 5 tests to be taken, each based on the 5 pillars of the ninja arts, namely, taijutsu, genjutsu, ninjutsu, kenjutsu and stealth and tracking skills. Kenjutsu being weapon skills, of course," he added, looking at the dense expression on the knucklehead's face. "Ah, alright then." Naruto's expression cleared, and Iruka continued, "The basic rules of the 5 tests are set as per the Council of Shadows, namely the cages of the 5 great nations. But each proctor who takes the exam can set some rules of his or her own, which test the exam in a different manner. For example, the Jonin exams which I passed had 2 different proctors for each exam. Kakashi and Mike Guy were the proctors for the stealth and tracking skills test. Kakashi had a basic test of hide and seek. The objective of his test was to find all of his clones in him before the time limit and then to escape him while he tracked us and our clones." Naruto nodded, and Iruka continued. Guy, however, had a different approach. He created an obstacle course to run through. You had to complete a certain numbers of mini-tests in the course to complete the test. So even though the basics are set by the council, the proctors have a great amount of leeway. "And you made Jonin this time, right?" Naruto asked. Iruka nodded, smiling proudly at his accomplishment. He said, "This time was easier for me, because I had been practicing more genjutsu and weapons, which most shinobi do not bother with at all." Naruto agreed with him, knowing only too well how his training had been in the last 3 years. As they left Ichiraku's, Naruto said, "Can you give me some tips regarding genjutsu sometime, sensei? I'm learning from Shizune-san, but I would be glad to have another teacher. now that my weapon skills are mostly polished. Iruka smiled at the slight exaggeration and said, "Sure, I'll do whatever I can to help." "Thanks a lot, sensei," Naruto shouted as he ran off into the night. Iruka slowly continued towards his house, finally allowing himself to show his wounds from the intense weapon fight with Naruto. As he reached home, he took out some ointment and began rubbing it over his limbs. "Damn, Naruto is strong now. He gave me such a drubbing this time that my bruises won't heal for days. He even surpassed me a long time ago. If I could, I would make him the Hokage as soon as he got as mature as he should be." Naruto entered his barracks to find the door in pieces. He looked at his apartment, totally in ruins, with scorches all over the walls and his gadgets in ruins. He looked at the mess and ran quickly to his bedroom. He lifted the bed up and looked under the secret compartment he had built into the bed. He heaved a sigh of relief. Nothing important to him had been touched. Obviously, whoever had done this had thought that he felt the gadgets were important to him. He couldn't care less about them. It could have been a ninja, using a fire jutsu, or simply some drunk civilians with torches. But one thing was certain, he could no longer stay here. He called up the Hokage and Kakashi in a conference call. They both picked up immediately and the Hokage yelled, "What is it, knucklehead?" While Kakashi asked more normally, "Did you need something, Naruto?" As they realized that it was a conference call, Tsunade calmed down and Kakashi looked worried. Naruto said simply, "They destroyed my apartment in the barracks." "What?" both of them said at the same time. He repeated the statement and they realized the gravity of the situation. Tsunade sighed, and Kakashi also let his disappointment show by swearing once. "What will you do now, Naruto?" he asked. "Do you want to bunk with me for a couple of days?" "Thanks, Kakashi-sensei. I guess I could crash on your couch for the night while I decide what to do next. Thankfully, nothing important to me has been destroyed, so that's a relief." Tsunade's heart went out to the boy, but he was still not legally of age, and so she again hid what belonged to him. She told him that she would see if she could do anything for him, and then said, "Good you called in a conference. Kakashi, I've been wanting to talk to you. Meet me at the office tomorrow afternoon." She closed the call on her side. Kakashi and Naruto spoke for a couple of minutes and then Kakashi told him to come over. Naruto took all of his gear, his important possessions, the scrolls the pervy sage had given him, and took off. He reached Kakashi's house, which was in a modestly decent part of town. He knocked and Kakashi opened the door. He was unmasked. Naruto saw that his face was lean and handsome. He realized why Ayame had been love-struck that day when they were trying to see his face, although it didn't have any effect on him. He thanked Kakashi for letting him stay. Next morning, Kakashi woke up to the smell and sound of frying bacon. He wondered what was going on, before remembering that Naruto was staying with him. He looked at the couch and couldn't believe that it had been slept in. When did Naruto get so tidy? He thought, remembering the state of Naruto's apartment when he had first visited it with the third Hokage. He washed his face and came to the dining room to see breakfast served and Naruto standing in his full uniform, ready to hit the street. "What's up, Naruto?" he asked, confused. Naruto looked at him sheepishly and said, "It's my way of saying thank you, sensei." Kakashi sat down and indicated that Naruto should sit as well. They both had breakfast and Kakashi's eye widened at the deliciousness of the bacon. He complimented Naruto, asking him, "Where did you learn to cook so well, Naruto?" Naruto grinned slightly. The pervy sage was quite demanding. "I had to earn my lessons by cooking for him. And he flat out refused to eat ramen. He said that I had survived on ramen long enough and that it was time to start eating healthy." Kakashi looked at Naruto, respect in his uncovered eye. "So, what are you going to do now, Naruto? Are you comfortable staying here, or do you want to find another place?" Naruto looked at his teacher in mild confusion and said, "I don't really know. I think it would be better to find another room rather than bother you every day." Kakashi nodded, saying, "I wouldn't mind if you stayed, as long as you cooked wonderful stuff every day." His eye twinkled and Naruto laughed. Then he said seriously, "I think I'll go around looking for a place to stay today." Kakashi agreed, and said, "I'll call up a few friends and ask if they have any older apartments that they don't use anymore." "Thanks, sensei." Naruto smiled at him. "Anytime, Naruto." Kakashi gave him his eye smile. Naruto looked up at the condos and decided to take a look. He had told Tucci about his problem, and the old man had directed Naruto towards the building where he himself stayed. But the locality was a little expensive and Naruto wasn't sure he wanted to spend so much money at the time. He thought, I'll take a look and if I like it a lot, I might rent it rather than buying it full out. He met the manager, who showed him the house. It was a decent-sized house, with a big living room, a modular kitchen and a master bedroom along with a smaller bedroom and a separate bathroom. Naruto shook his head, saying, "It's way too big for me alone." The manager agreed, realizing that he would not be able to take care of the house on his own, and so he let the matter rest. Naruto looked up various addresses that Kakashi had given him over a message, but all of them were again too big, made for couples or even families. He thought of asking his friends if anyone had an extra room which he could rent out. He ran into Shikamaru as he was on his way into the market district. Shikamaru said, "I am staying in a one-room flat, anything bigger than that will be too troublesome. So I can't help you, Naruto. But I think Kiba and Shino have bigger apartments. Maybe you could try there?" Naruto thanked him and Shikamaru gave him the addresses. Naruto ran off to Kiba's house. He knocked and Kiba welcomed him in. As Naruto told him what had happened, he sympathized with his friend but said, "Unfortunately, my other room is used by Akamaru as his kennel, so I can't possibly give it to rent." "I'm sorry, Naruto." Naruto understood and Kiba apologized again for not being able to help. "It's alright, Kiba. I'll see some other place." "Don't worry about it," Naruto said. He left and went to Shino's house. But the result was about the same. Shino had kept his other room as a hive for his insects. Naruto paled a little and almost ran out of the house. As he sat at Ichiraku's again for lunch, Ino popped in and said, "Hey old man, can I have a diet ramen?" Then she noticed Naruto sitting in a corner, staring at his ramen with a melancholy expression, and quietly asked Tucci what was up. Tucci answered, with a sympathetic look on his face, "Naruto's apartment in the barracks was raised by someone. He's looking for a place to stay but hasn't found anything small enough for him." Ino looked at Naruto and then joined him at the table. Naruto looked up and saw her looking at him intently. "Hey, Ino, what is a girl like you doing at a ramen shop?" he asked, looking at her with a fake smile. She saw through his facade, she wasn't an interrogation specialist for nothing, after all. Tucci answered, as he put the ramen down on the table, "Ino-san loves our new diet ramen. She's here almost as much as you now." "I see," Naruto replied, taking a bite of noodles from his ramen. Ino looked at him, saying, "I can help you out, Naruto." He choked, and quickly drank a glass of water. "What do you mean, Ino? What help?" He tried to keep up his mask of normalcy, but it faltered in front of her. "What's wrong with me?" he thought. "I'm an interrogator ninja, Naruto. I can tell when someone is lying or faking their expressions," Ino said, taking a small bite of noodles as well. Naruto's mask slipped and she saw the worried expression on his face. He asked her, "What did you mean by saying you can help me?" Ino's looked at him and said, "I meant that I own an apartment now, which has 2 bedrooms. And I have wanted to rent the other bedroom out for quite a while now." Naruto's face brightened as he considered that. Ino is a girl, which means that her apartment must be in a better area of the city, and considerably cleaner than any of my male friends' apartments. But then his face fell, thinking, there is also the fact that she is a girl, and that moving into her house could raise suspicions and awkward questions, even if I am paying rent. Also, I am not as close to Ino as I am with Shikamaru, or Sakura, for that matter. He said, "Can you come with me?" She nodded. Naruto and Ino looked out to the village, sitting atop the stone head of the 4th Hokage. Ino had to admit, the view was spectacular. She had never been here before. She looked back at Naruto, who was lying down, with his eyes open. He looked so calm and relaxed that she couldn't believe that a guy like this had such a rough past. Naruto spoke, "I come here whenever I'm feeling low or sad. The wind on my skin, and ruffling through my hair allows me to forget my worries, if only for a little while. That is why I wanted you to come here. I wanted to ask you something." Ino said, "Sure, fire away." Naruto sat up and looked at her. "Why are you doing this?" he asked her. She looked at him in surprise. "What do you mean?" she asked genuinely. He elaborated, "Why are you helping me, all of a sudden?" She looked hurt and he quickly amended, "Not that I'm against it, Ino. But I've never really been helped like this before and it's in my nature to get suspicious at such actions." I was even suspicious when Iruka-sensei first offered to teach me privately after the normal classes had got over. But I learned to trust him later. So I just want to know the reason, that's all. She realized his feelings and looked at her feet. Then she spoke, I've seen the cruel stuff that has been done to you. I never spoke against it because nobody else had ever defended you either. I always used to think about Sasuke and wonder why you liked to challenge him so much. But I was forced to stay away from you by my parents and so, I didn't help you in the way I should have. She frowned, continuing, as time passed by, you became a stronger ninja. You defeating Neji in the Chunin exams made me realize that you were not the stupid boy in the class as everyone thought you were. After that, I started to notice your abilities as well. Although I used to always pretend that I was after Sasuke, I also wanted to observe you. He looked at her in incredulous amazement and she nodded sadly. I wanted you to have more friends. I wanted you to have a normal life like the others. The only thing I did not understand at the time was why you were treated that way. But after seeing the Kyuubi erupt from inside you that day, I suddenly understood. I understood why the citizens always looked at you with hatred. I understood why our parents tried to keep us away from you. But you have a magnetic personality, Naruto. Somehow, no matter what people try, they will be attracted towards you. It was the same thing that happened to me. I had decided to be your friend, Naruto. But just then, Sasuke left the village and you and Sakura were heartbroken. I visited you once, but you were unconscious. And then soon after that, you left the village for training with Master Jiraiya. I didn't think you would be gone so long. But as time passed, I realized that I was missing you. Missing a friend. Missing a person who had changed me, even if indirectly. Naruto felt tears coming to his eyes and quickly wiped them away. He hadn't noticed this part of Ino ever before. He had always thought that she wanted to hang around with Sasuke, so he had never given her any notice before. But as he realized it, he could remember flashes of her smiling at him and glancing at him occasionally. He looked at her happily and said, "Thank you, Ino. Thank you for being such a good friend." She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks now, saying, "If I were half the friend that you have been to me, you wouldn't have to say that." Naruto put his hand on her shoulder and she looked up into his confident face. He said, "I would never begrudge you by the actions caused by other people. I feel proud of being the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox. It makes me feel that I have something that made me worthy to be of the fourth's attention. So please stop crying, Ino." Ino nodded, wiping her cheeks and looking back towards him, hiccuping slightly, "So are you going to rent that room, then? You never answered me." He looked up, remembering why he had asked her to come up here. He said, "I dunno, Ino. People might get the wrong interpretation if I move into your house with you." Ino looked at him, surprised and slightly blushing. She hadn't expected him to be the shy type. She said, "No one will say anything after the number of houses that you have approached today. And if anyone says anything, we'll shut their mouths together." "All right," she said confidently. He blinked and then nodded. "Okay, then. I guess this could work. But I'll rent it only until I get a place of my own." She agreed, respecting his decision. "Let's go, then. My home is quite far away from here." They both stood up and took one last deep breath, before running down the stairs together, smiling. Naruto looked up at the building with amazement. He had been past this building almost every day of his life as he went to Ichiraku's, but had never stopped to look at it thoroughly. Ino smiled slightly at his expression and led him in. The receptionist looked up and smiled. "Good afternoon, Ino-san. You don't usually come back home in the afternoon. Is there any?" She froze as she saw Naruto walk up behind Ino. Her tone changed to that of utmost fright as she said, "What do you want? Please leave the building immediately." Ino glared at her. "Is that how you treat my guests, Kurumi-san? I am very disappointed in you." Kurumi stared at Ino as if she were mad and began, "Ino. That boy is my friend," Ino said. Kurumi stopped in mid-sentence as though she had been slapped. "He is my friend. Also, he is the boy who saved the entire village 3 years ago, during the attack from the Sound Village. He is Naruto Uzumaki," Ino continued. Naruto felt as though a light balloon had inflated inside him. Kurumi continued, her voice hinting urgently towards Ino, "But he is the demon fox." Ino stepped up towards Kurumi till she was almost nose to nose with the woman. She said, "He is not the demon fox. He is a boy who has had to suffer terrible hardships because of the choice of the fourth Hokage, who sealed the beast inside him. Naruto is as ordinary a boy as you are an ordinary woman. So if you ever utter those words again, I shall not mourn at your funeral. You have been warned." Ino stared coldly at Kurumi, who gulped once, then calmed down slightly. She said, "I am sorry, Ino-san. I forgot myself when I saw him approach. Please forgive me." Ino replied coldly, "I am not the one who needs the apology." Kurumi looked at Naruto, still a hint of fear in her eye, and said, "Please forgive me, Uzumaki-san. I shouldn't have said such a thing about you. I am terribly sorry." Naruto walked up towards her and held out his hand, without saying a word. After a moment of consideration, and a glare from Ino, Kurumi took his hand. He shook it and said jovially, "Call me Naruto. And you do not need to apologize. I am quite familiar with people treating me this way. It has greatly increased my patience with them. I just hope that you won't refer to me as the demon fox again, because that annoyance is already sealed within me. I am just an ordinary kid with an extraordinary dream of being Hokage." The receptionist looked at him with a hint of amazement. She had never heard the boy's voice personally before, and never thought that he would be so well-mannered. Mildly embarrassed, she nodded, and apologized again. He smiled at her and she warmed up to him immediately. As the two of them entered the lift, she blushed slightly, thinking, "He's quite tall and handsome too." The two of them got off at the 8th floor. Naruto followed Ino into an apartment on their right-hand side. As they entered, Naruto caught a whiff of some sweet smell, which was very enticing. He looks at her questioningly, and she said, "It's a plant which I'm very fond of. The alyssum flowers are extremely easy to grow and even reseed themselves automatically, giving huge clusters of flowers at a time, which smell very sweet." Naruto nodded, taking in some more of the sweet aroma before looking around him. The living room was well kept, spacious and most importantly, not in pink. Naruto heaved a sigh of relief at that. Ino asked, "What happened?" mistaking his sigh for disappointment. He said, "I was so sure that everything would be pink." Ino chuckled and then chided him in mock anger, "Don't you think I would be wearing pink if that was the case? I have different tastes in colors." He also smiled, moving in a little. He saw a neatly kept kitchen towards the right of the room, next to which was a room with a lock on it. He presumed that was the spare room. He looked at her and she nodded nervously, saying, "You may want to clean it up a bit. I haven't checked it in quite a while." He said, "Not a problem. I have a jutsu for that." She looked surprised at that. He said, "I never took care of my barracks, because they were not my home. They were just a place to stay, while I earned money to buy my own place. But this is different. I always wanted a place of my own, which I could keep clean and come back to happily. So I will take care of this place as though it were my own." Ino fished through a drawer at the table on the right corner in the living room, and found the key. She opened the room and hopped back as a cloud of dust flew up in front of her. Coughing lightly, she looked at him apologetically. He stepped into the room as the dust settled, opened the huge window and signed quickly, intoning, "Wind style. Giant sweep through jutsu." The dust was all swept up and at his direction, flew out of the window and he ran towards the window. As the dust started to fall downwards, he signed again, saying, "Wind style, 4 wind scattering." He purposely kept the speed and density of the winds higher and the power less, so that the dust scattered evenly across the sky and slowly vanished from view. Naruto turned to see the room in a pristine state, and Ino with a stunned look on her face. He scratched his head, embarrassed. Ino said, "You have got to teach me that." "What?" Naruto asked, confused. "I have to clean my house by hand, every time I go out on long missions. If I could do this, that would save a heck of a lot of time for me," Ino explained. Naruto nodded his understanding and went back into the living room, picked up his bag, and brought it in. Ino said, "If you want to take a shower, the bathroom is on the other side. My bedroom is off the landing opposite of the main bathroom. I'm gonna change into something comfortable now, you also get settled in," she said, and left the room, leaving Naruto in to check out the room fully. He looked at everything carefully, making sure nothing was fragile. The bed was comfortably springy, but not to the point where one would simply sink into it. He liked that. Naruto took his stuff out of his bag and started arranging it. He put his clothes and uniforms into the wardrobe, and his spare headband on the dresser next to it. Then he took out his important possessions from the bottom of the bag and put them in drawer of the wardrobe, before putting a seal on the drawer, so that it would only open on his touch. "I should take a shower. All this running around today has made me grimy, he thought as he took his towel, and headed towards the main bathroom. As he headed towards the bathroom, Naruto bumped into Ino as she was coming out of her bedroom. He goggled at her. Ino was dressed in a small beige camisole top and dark blue boy shorts. Holy shit, he thought as she muttered a quick apology and sauntered off into the living room. Naruto almost ran into the bathroom. Ino sat in the living room, blushing at how Naruto had stared at her right now. She had totally forgotten about him while she was changing. She wondered whether to go back and change into something less revealing, but decided that it would be too troublesome. Meanwhile, Naruto couldn't stop the image of Ino from flashing in his head all the time. Damn, when did Ino get so hot? He thought. As Naruto stepped back into the landing, Ino noticed him. Naruto was standing in only his towel wrapped around him. As he crossed the room quickly, blushing at her stare, she thought only one thing, holy shit, he's ripped. Is this really the same scrawny Naruto I knew 3 years ago? Naruto almost ran into his bedroom, blushing the entire way. He wasn't accustomed to showing off his body to anyone, let alone a girl. He immediately got into his clothes, a light blue shirt and khaki shorts. He came back out to see Ino looking off into the distance, her eyes glazed, and drool on the side of her mouth. He stepped up in front of her and snapped his fingers. Ino looked at him and then hastily wiped the drool from her lips. You want anything to eat, Ino? I was going to get a pizza or something, but I decided to ask you first, Naruto said. Ino went back into a trance briefly, wondering about something else that he could eat, but he snapped his fingers again and she said, I'll just have a couple of slices off your pizza. I'm dieting, after all. Naruto shook his head knowingly and ordered pizza. The two of them sat watching a TV flick until the pizza arrived. Suddenly, Naruto remembered. Oh man, I totally forgot to inform Kakashi-sensei that I found a place. Just give me a moment, Ino. Sure, she replied, but make it quick, I don't want the pizza to get cold. Naruto stepped into the balcony and dialed Kakashi-sensei's number. The phone rang thrice before Kakashi picked it up, saying, What's up, Naruto? You didn't tell me whether you found a place yet. Naruto said, I'm sorry, I totally forgot about it. I'm renting a room at Ino's apartment cause she has an extra room. I'll stay here until I find a place of my own to buy. Kakashi nodded, although Naruto couldn't see him, and said, Good for you, Naruto. Well, take care. I'm going to the Hokage's office now, she had called me today afternoon. How about meeting me in the evening at the Memorial Stone? Sure thing, sensei. Naruto agreed enthusiastically. Kakashi hung up and Naruto headed back in. Ino had put some ketchup and chili powder on the pizza and was waiting to start. He looked at her, confused. Why didn't you start eating, Ino? She looked at him and said simply, You ordered the food. I cannot insult that be starting before you. We should eat together. He said, Sorry, I'm not used to all this stuff because I've lived alone till now. Kakashi entered the office of the Hokage. She looked up and said, Good of you to drop by. He smirked under his mask and said, Nice of you to ask. She nodded at him to sit. As he sat on the chair in front of her, she leaned forward and asked him, Did you notice all the combat styles and jutsus that Naruto has suddenly seemed to learn? Kakashi nodded, saying, It's quite astonishing. I have only ever seen Kushina-san use the Iron Monk style before. How did the knucklehead learn it? Tsunade said, I asked him about it and it took some prodding and a blood oath and he told me. Kakashi's eye widened in surprise. If the Hokage had to take a blood oath to hide the secret, it must indeed be something astonishing. He asked, Can you give me any hint as to what it is? Tsunade smirked and said, Much as I wish I could, I can't. The blood oath was taken in front of Naruto and he worded it for me. Although I can tell you this. Naruto is quite possibly the strongest ninja in the Hidden Leaf Village right now, even surpassing the fourth Hokage. Kakashi looked at her, numbed with shock. What training had Master Jiraiya given Naruto, that the Hokage had said that he had surpassed Kakashi's sensei? He looked at her and said, I see. Well then, I guess you're planning to retire soon, right? She laughed and said, Not quite. Naruto may be stronger than anyone else, but his level of maturity is still comparable to an infant. When he shows his maturity and attains the level of Jonin, I will no doubt hand over the title to him. But Kakashi, should anything happen to me before this, I wish for you to be the next Hokage. Kakashi paled and said, "But milady, I don't want." Tsunade held up her hand and stopped him. She said, "I never asked for this job as well. But when I came back, I realized that this was indeed what I was meant for. Just as you are meant for it too. You have punished yourself for too long, for thinking that you failed to protect your comrades. No more. This time, if anything happens to me, you will be the next Hokage and guide the village until Naruto is ready for it." Kakashi nodded weakly. She said, "You may leave." He thought, what a drag. They enjoyed the pizza and went back to watching some more TV, Naruto occasionally glancing at Ino and vice versa, until evening when Naruto went to meet Kakashi. Kakashi said, "I am happy you found a place to stay, Naruto. Although I'll miss the early morning bacon." They both laughed briefly before Kakashi continued, "Be a little careful, Naruto. Staying in a girl's house always attracts unwanted attention and awkward questions." Naruto nodded and said, "I know, sensei." But Ino insisted and said that if anyone said anything, she would help me shut that person's mouth as well. Kakashi looked at him in surprise, thinking, when did Ino become so close to Naruto? "Alright then, see you later, Naruto." Kakashi took off, and Naruto headed back home before realizing that he was headed to the barracks. He chided himself for forgetting, and turned the other way around. As he reached the building, he saw Ino out in the balcony, tending to her flowers. He smiled happily. 297, 298, 299, 300. Naruto said as he completed his push-ups. He got up from the ground and fell into the sofa. Ino came out of the kitchen and yelled, "For the last time, Naruto, don't put that sweaty body of yours on the sofa. How many times do I have to tell you?" He was up in a moment, wiping his sweat off with his towel, saying sheepishly, "Sorry, Ino-chan." She froze. What did he just call me? Did he just say Ino-chan? She thought, blushing. He realized what he had just said and quickly said, "If you don't like the honorifics, I won't use them again, Ino." Ino looked at him, still blushing slightly. She teased, "On the contrary, I liked it a lot, Naru-chan." She emphasized on chan, and he blushed too, understanding how she had felt when she heard it. What's got into me? Calling Ino as though she is my. Although she is my friend now, I should give her some time before I start using that word again. Naruto thought, and he went into his bedroom. Ino went back into the kitchen and continued preparing pancakes for breakfast. Naruto came out of his bedroom in full uniform, and sniffed at the delicious smell of the pancakes. "Wow, Ino-ch. Ino, you're a really good cook," he said, while thinking, there I go again. Gotta remember to stop calling her that. Ino smiled and said, "My mom taught this recipe to me. I thought of trying it, now that I have someone else to cook for too." Naruto looked at her, embarrassed, and said, "Ino, you don't have to cook for me, ya know? I can cook too." Ino said, "I know I don't have to. But I want to. I never cook because it's too much to do just for one person. But since we are two of us, I can cook now without it being a waste of time." Naruto replied, "In that case, I will help you with cooking too." She nodded, pleased, "I would like that." They both sat and ate the pancakes, Naruto enjoying the flavor of the pancakes. Just as they were finished, a knock on the door caught their attention. Ino tried to take the dishes, but Naruto beat her to it. "You cooked," he said, "it's only fair that I do the dishes." She smiled at him, and went to answer the door, while he took the dishes into the kitchen. It was Sakura. She came inside, saying, "Get ready, Ino. Our teams have a mission." Naruto's ears perked up. He created a single clone without making a sound. The clone grumbled silently, thinking, "Why'd I always get the work?" Naruto stepped closer towards the living room. He heard Sakura saying, "The Hokage has called our teams right away to ninja ops. I was trying your phone but it was not getting connected." Ino nodded, saying, "The battery ran out. I only just put it for charging." Sakura sighed and said, "I haven't been able to find Shikamaru and Naruto as well. I wonder where they've gone." Ino's eyes shot up in amazement. She didn't know that Naruto had not told Sakura about him renting Ino's house. Naruto slapped his hand to his forehead as well. "How could I forget about that?" he thought. He stepped into the living room and Sakura noticed him. "Naruto? What on earth are you doing here?" Sakura said, looking at Ino and him suspiciously. Naruto said, "My house in the barracks was destroyed by someone. I've rented the spare bedroom in Ino's house." Sakura looked at his seemingly honest face, but wasn't entirely convinced. However, she realized he was in his full uniform and guessed that he was at least partially telling the truth. She said, "Anyway, come on quickly. The Hokage is waiting for us." Naruto nodded, and Ino said, "Both of you get going. I'll get ready and meet you guys in 10 minutes at Ops." Naruto and Sakura nodded. They both took to the buildings, with Naruto growing more and more uncomfortable as Sakura's eyes bore through him from behind. He finally stopped on top of a building and said, "What is it, Sakura?" She looked at him intently and said, "Why didn't you tell me that your house was destroyed?" He replied, "Everything happened very quickly. The only people apart from Ino who knows this is Kakashi-sensei, Grandma Tsunade, Kiba and Shino. And some of Kakashi-sensei's old friends from the Anbu who Kakashi-sensei sent me to ask if they could show me around their old houses. I bunked with Kakashi-sensei the day before and spent half the day yesterday searching for houses. I met Ino at Ichiraku's and she told me that she wanted to rent her spare bedroom out. So I decided to take a look and liked the locality. It's also close to Ichiraku's and the ninja ops as well. They had started moving again." Sakura looked at him uncertainly. He blushed uncomfortably under the gaze. She suddenly asked, "Naruto, do you have a crush on Ino?" He almost fell as he heard her statement. What? Why would you think that way, Sakura?" He stammered. "I knew it," shouted inner Sakura, while Sakura looked at him. "Don't try to hide it from me, Naruto. I know you quite well by now." She cracked her knuckles dangerously. He looked at her, terrified, and said, Okay, fine. Ever since I returned to the Leaf Village and saw her that day when we met them, remember? The time they were heading out for that B-rank mission? I started crushing on her a little from then. But please don't tell her, Sakura. She's only recently become my friend and I don't want to ruin our friendship by this." Sakura looked away and then said, "Don't worry. Your secret is safe with me." He heard an odd emptiness in her voice, but couldn't understand what it was. They reached the ninja ops to see Iruka, Yugo, Hinata, Choji, and Shikamaru waiting for them. Sakura guessed that Choji had found Shikamaru. They went into the office and Tsunade turned to talk to them, before saying, "Where's Ino?" Sakura replied, she didn't receive the call like the others, because her phone's batteries were discharged. "She'll be here in 10 minutes. Alright then, we'll wait for her," the Hokage said. After around 12 minutes, Ino shunshined into the office in full combat gear, and the Hokage immediately started. "I have an A- ranked mission for all of you." Everyone looked at her in surprise. There were 8 of them standing there, 2 of them Jonin, 5 of them Chunin, and 1 Genin who was stronger than most Jonin. They wondered what missions could require so many people. The Sannin continued, "The mission is to protect the daughter of the daimyo of the Land of Fire, Princess Narumi, from a kidnapping attempt." Suddenly most of them realized why such a substantial group was being sent for the mission. The daimyo had absolute control over the country, and his daughter was the only weakness anyone could exploit in order to take over the entire country at once. "Lady Tsunade," said Iruka, "I don't understand why we need 8 ninja for this job. Surely the threat is not that big." "Quite correct, Iruka. The threat is not great, but this is the daughter of the daimyo, so a show of strength and loyalty is needed," Tsunade said, and Iruka nodded, as did Naruto. Choji raised his hand and Tsunade looked at him questioningly. "Why aren't Kiba, Neji or Shino here? Or for that matter, Lee?" She nodded appreciatively at his question and said, "Lee is still in therapy from the damage he took against the grave robbers. Kiba's clan markings are much bigger than yours and are too obvious. Also, Neji has the curse mark seal, which will make him stand out since he will not be able to cover it. And there is a reason Shino is covered from the head down." Choji nodded, satisfied with the reasoning. "And you are not 8 ninjas," continued Tsunade, "you are 9. Tenten has been undercover for a month as an exchange student to the school of Princess Narumi, and will be joining this mission. The various schools around the country are sending their students to Norikawa Beach in the Land of Waves for a week to see the upcoming meteor shower." Everyone nodded, and she said, "This mission is such that you will not be allowed to act as ninja. You must pass as civilian students. That means, no visible weapons, civilian clothes, and since it's a beach, swimsuits." Hinata, Sakura and Ino blushed. The boys looked at each other, slightly embarrassed. Tsunade continued, "You will be leaving next week. Make sure that you have everything ready with you when you leave." And Iruka, make sure that Naruto has appropriate clothing, given his fashion sense. Or complete lack thereof. Hey. Naruto glared at her and everyone else except Hinata laughed. As they headed out of the office, Hinata looked at Yugo and tapped her fingers, saying, Yugo-san? I don't have a swimsuit. I still have my academy one, but I don't think it will fit. Can you help me? Yugo smiled gently at the timid girl and said, sure, Hinata. I just have to take care of a few things, and then I'll meet you around 4 p.m. at Yoroi's store? Hinata nodded and rushed off, still blushing. Such a sweet young girl, Yugo thought, before leaving as well. Ino and Sakura stepped out from the corner where they had been eavesdropping. Ino said, you know, it's been a long time since I went to the beach. Want to get a look at something nice to wear? Sakura groaned as Ino smiled mischievously, for more than one reason. They headed out to Yoroi's store as fast as they could, Ino leading the way. Meanwhile, Naruto and Iruka were unknowingly headed the same way. Naruto grumbled the entire way, saying, I have enough clothes, Iruka-sensei. I don't need more clothes. Iruka nodded, saying, you have enough clothes which would make other people puke, Naruto. You're coming with me and picking out at least 5 new outfits that will make you look more like a human being than an orange scarecrow. As they entered the shop, Naruto heard Ino's voice, saying, how about this one, Sakura? And heard the gasp of Sakura, saying, no way. It's so revealing. Absolutely not. Ino sighed. Sakura could still be such a shy girl when it came to flaunting herself. She picked up another swimsuit, a light pink tank top along with light blue short shorts. She thrust them to Sakura and told her, get in there and put in on. Sakura groaned at this unnecessary stuff and went in after catching the expression on Ino's face, which clearly said, get in there or I'll mind transfer in there and do it myself. As Naruto heard all this, the pervert inside of him rose majestically and he said, I don't really like any of these shirts, Iruka-sensei, they're all pretty ugly. I need some new sandals though. I'ma look at some. Conveniently, the sandals stand was quite near the changing rooms, so he could get a good look at the girls. Ino was standing with her back to him, checking out a couple of bikinis. She was wearing a loose shirt and slacks, facilitating her to quickly change clothes, if needed. She turned towards the dressing room, saying, this one seems to be my size. He looked at her and thought, 34D 24 to 32. Now, Naruto, the first thing you must learn before any battle is how to measure up your opponent precisely and accurately, the old Sannin had taught him. Of course, rather than teaching him to size up real opponents, the old man had made Naruto look at women passing by, until the knucklehead could tell the size of a woman at a glance. Now, only the thickest of coats or jackets would have shielded his eyes from measuring the girl in front of him. As she waited for Sakura to come out, Ino picked out 2 more suits to try on. Naruto got a small nosebleed, imagining how she would look in them. Just then Sakura came out, wearing the suit that Ino had given her. It looked quite good on her, and was not revealing much except her legs, which she didn't hide anyway. Ino nodded appreciatively, saying, very cute, Sakura. Naruto nodded too, thinking, 38 24 to 28. Just then, Hinata and Yugo also entered the store. Ino and Sakura looked at the new arrivals and welcomed them. Yugo picked up a 2-piece swimsuit for Hinata, who almost fainted, seeing how revealing it was. Yugo put it down almost instantly, picking up another 2-piece, which was a haltered top along with half-thigh shorts. She gave them to Hinata and said, try it on. Still blushing furiously, Hinata put on the 2-piece and came out. Naruto almost whistled before he caught himself. He thought, 34DD 24 to 32. Both Ino and Sakura looked at Hinata's chest with jealousy, however, Hinata didn't seem to notice, as she looked over straight into Naruto's eyes at the sandal stall, and squeaked, "Nah, Naruto?" before fainting on the spot. Sakura also looked over to the spot and Naruto found a rather different expression on her face. "Naruto!" she roared and charged at him. He caught her punch with his right hand rather than let himself get clobbered as usual. "How dare you peek like this at us, Naruto?" Ino walked up to him, looking at him appraising Ly and asked, "Were you peeking, Naruto? If you were, prepare to die." Naruto gulped slightly. Ino's calm gaze had scared him more than Sakura's aggressiveness. He knew that if she mind transferred into him, she would find out everything immediately. He didn't give her the chance, delving into another advice the pervy sage had given him. Always have a reply ready if anyone catches you while infiltrating some secret forbidden area, Naruto. And of course, the Sannin had forced Naruto to peek at women in hot springs until Naruto could smoothly lie after being caught in such situations. He looked unflinchingly at Ino and said, "You heard Lady Tsunade talking about my fashion sense, right?" Ino and Sakura nodded, and he continued, "I came to the shop to buy some shirts, but they were all quite bad." Iruka-sensei is still looking over the shirts again. See? They saw Iruka standing nearby, ruffling through shirts. They looked at him with a little less suspicion. "Then what are you doing here?" they asked at the same time. He continued, "I needed to buy civilian sandals. As you know, mine are totally out for this trip. They are fully armored ninja sandals, and anyone would catch me immediately. And anyway," he said, "I was gonna see you girls in swimsuits soon anyway, so why would I bother getting beat up just to see you a few days earlier?" He let go of Sakura's hand as if to make his point. Ino and Sakura looked at each other and then pulled out a pair of sandals from the stand. "These will do for you," Sakura said. She then picked up Naruto by the scruff and put him down next to Iruka. She said, "You forgot something, sensei," before walking off back to where Yugo was trying to revive Hinata. Iruka looked at Naruto questioningly. "What did you do now, Naruto?" Naruto said defensively, "Don't you want to see what swimsuits the girls are gonna wear?" Iruka looked at Naruto severely and said, "First of all, I respect girls. Secondly, they are my students." He said to himself, "Also, if she caught me looking at teenaged Kunoichi, suicide would be preferable to what she would do to me." Naruto's ears perked up as he heard the sentence. "Who's she, Iruka-sensei?" he asked, smirking at his former mentor. Iruka stammered, Lady Tsunade, of course." Naruto nodded, thinking what Iruka-sensei had said, and decided it wasn't worth taking another peek. They went out to other shops and picked out a few interesting t-shirts and shorts for Naruto. Naruto thanked Iruka-sensei for his time and the two of them parted ways. Naruto reached home to find the door locked. He fished out the key, remembering that Ino was with the others back at Yoroi's store. He entered the house, muttered, "I'm home," and went to keep his stuff in his bedroom. After that, he got some ramen out of the refrigerator, heated some water, poured it into the ramen cup and started eating. Just then a kunai flung its way into the house and he jumped up, his mouth full of burning hot noodles, as the kunai had distracted him and made him take a much larger bite than intended. As he spat the noodles back into the bowl and began dancing around in pain, Ino entered the house with another kunai armed in her left hand. As she saw Naruto, her expression changed to that of complete embarrassment and she said, "I'm so sorry, Naruto. I haven't got used to seeing the door unlocked when I get back. I totally freaked out and forgot that you were also staying here now." He said, "It's okay. Only don't ever do it again. I burned my mouth pretty badly right now." Ino looked at him, confused, then looked at the ramen cup in his hand and started giggling uncontrollably. She burst out laughing and tears streamed out of her eyes. Naruto couldn't help himself and started laughing too. Then he noticed the bag on her arm and asked, "Your swimsuit?" while blushing faintly. She stopped laughing slowly, gasping for air, and simply nodded her head. Then she gave him a coy look and said seductively, "Want to see me in it?" Naruto couldn't stop. His face turned beetroot red as she smiled at him, came close to him and admonished softly in his ear, "Pervert." Then she smiled wickedly and said, "I'm gonna make you wait for ages, before you see me in this, Naruto." Naruto turned and quickly ran into his room before she could notice it. He heard her laughing again as she went to change in her own room. What just happened? Did Sakura tell Ino about my crush on her? She wouldn't, would she? Naruto said, worried and his pants tented in appreciation of Ino's sudden seductive performance. As the day arrived to leave for the tour, Ino and Naruto both woke up at dawn and started to get ready. As Ino stepped out of her room, Naruto goggled at her. Ino was wearing a simple lavender frock which went down to around half of her thighs. It was tight-fitting until the part where it flared at her hips, and spread out a little at the end. She blushed slightly at his stare, but maintained her composure nevertheless. Naruto said, "You look stunning, Ino." She smiled and said, "You're not looking half bad yourself." He had worn a deep blue t-shirt with a golden floral print on it, perfect for the beach. Along with them went a pair of beige shorts, which looked like camo material. Ino appreciated the outfit, liking Naruto's choice, not knowing that Iruka had picked these out for Naruto. They both left the house, Naruto locking it behind them. As they reached the gates, they found no one there except the guards. "Where's everyone?" Naruto thought. After a couple of minutes, Sakura showed up, wearing a light green tank top that matched her eyes, and full-length jeans. She also wore a nice hat, and looked pretty as well. Naruto complimented her as well, and she smiled and said, "Thanks, Naruto." One by one, everyone arrived. Naruto looked around but couldn't see Tenten or Iruka anywhere. He asked Yugo where they were and Yugo replied, "Tenten is still with the students of Princess Narumi's school. She will meet us directly at the Land of Waves. As for Iruka, he's getting our transportation." Naruto looked at her in confusion, saying, "Transportation?" Sakura looked at him, exasperated and said, "Are you going to walk to the Land of Waves, Naruto?" He replied, "Why not? I've done it before." She said, "You're not a ninja this time, Baka. We had to act as civilians. No civilian would be able to walk to the Land of Waves in a day." He nodded, understanding, and then looked at the gates as a huge vehicle suddenly rumbled up towards them, with Iruka driving. "A bus? Where'd it come from?" Naruto asked. Iruka got down from the bus and replied, "The Leaf Village keeps some of these vehicles on hand for urgent business or for loaning to the civilians if they wish to travel in a tour." "So where did you learn to drive, Iruka-sensei?" Naruto inquired, to which Iruka replied, "LL Chunin over the appropriate age are taught how to drive." He looked at Sakura and asked her, "So you can drive?" She said wistfully, "No, you have to be 18, not only a Chunin." "Alright, everyone put your bags in the back of the bus, and then pick a seat," Yugo said, and everyone complied. Somehow Naruto found himself sitting next to Ino. He smiled at her, and she smiled back. Hinata looked at the two of them, uncertain of what to do. Just then, Naruto looked back at Hinata and said, "Hey Hinata, what happened to your eyes? They used to be white." She stammered, "I couldn't pass as a civilian with the Byakugan, so the Hokage gave me colored contacts to wear." He smiled at her, saying, "Nice color, just like my eyes." She blushed at that, sighing in relief that she had spoken to him without fainting. Just then the bus started and Naruto lurched at the sudden movement. He looked uncomfortably at Ino, who stared back in surprise. "Have you never been on a bus, Naruto?" she asked. He replied, "I never got a chance, Ino." "Have you been on a bus before?" She said, "Yes, I was 5 when my parents took me to Kishinjimi Beach at the Land of Water. That was the first time I sat in a bus." Naruto nodded, still feeling a little uncomfortable. As the time passed, he got a little used to the feeling and got up, going to the front of the bus. He asked Yugo, who was sitting in front with Iruka, "Can I sit next to you?" Yugo looked at him, surprised, and he said, "I've never moved so fast without having control over my body before. I wanted to see the trees as they passed by from the front." She nodded and shifted to the left to make a place for him to sit. Naruto tried to look at the view outside the bus, but his eyes kept focusing towards Yugo. She frowned at the attention, before he suddenly shouted, "That's it." Iruka almost went off-road at the distraction and glared at Naruto. "Sorry, sensei," Naruto said, before turning to Yugo, "I finally remembered where I've seen you before. You were sitting next to Kakashi-sensei at the third's funeral, weren't you?" Yugo exhaled in relief and said, yes, I was." Naruto went back to looking out of the window and Yugo turned her attention outwards too. Still looking out of the window, Naruto asked, "So how do you know Kakashi-sensei?" Yugo blanched. As they pulled up to the resort, Naruto couldn't help but almost run out and feel the fresh humid air on his face. The rest of the squad got down after him carefully, keeping an eye for the other civilians, now that they were supposed to act like them. Sakura whispered angrily, "Act like a mature guy, Naruto." He looked at her and remembered the mission. He nodded at her sheepishly. Iruka stepped out of the driver's seat, yawning. "Everyone get your bags from the back of the bus. We'll get checked in and then have lunch. After that you guys can hit the beach." Everyone nodded, and trooped into the hotel. Just as they all finished getting their room keys, a shout came up from the opposite side of the room, "Hey, Ino." Ino looked around to find Tenten waving at her. She smiled and waved back. Tenten came running towards them, dragging another girl with her. She said, "It's so good to see you guys after so long. Aren't you a sight for sore eyes?" Everyone laughed and Iruka asked, "Who is your friend there, Tenten?" Tenten said, "This is Narumi. She's a friend of mine from the school where I was sent as an exchange student." Everyone's eyes widened as they realized that it was the princess. Narumi was hazel-eyed, with wonderfully long and curly black hair flowing down to the small in her back, and had a lean and athletic figure that rivaled Ino's. Her face was triangular-shaped, with a slightly pointed chin, that gave her a look of cunning along with beauty. Narumi bowed towards them slightly. Yugo said, "It is an honor to meet you, Princess Narumi." Narumi said, "Please do not say things like that. I really hate it when people address me like I'm someone high and mighty. I have done nothing yet to receive such exaggerated reactions from people. Just call me Narumi, everyone." "Tenten, won't you introduce me to your friends?" Tenten nodded. She said, "These are our teachers, Uruka-sensei and Yugo-sensei. These are my friends, Ino, Sakura, Hinata, Naruto, Shikamaru, and Choji." Narumi looked them up and down. She shook everyone's hand. She seemed pleased with Naruto and Choji and a little put off at Shikamaru's expressions. She shook Hinata's hand with more than a little dominance, and clasped hands challengingly with Ino and Sakura. Her eyes twinkled as she met Ino's eyes. Lunch was very nice indeed. As everyone sat and spoke, Princess Narumi walked up to them and asked, "May I sit with you guys?" Yugo said, "It would be an honor, Narumi-sama." Narumi frowned and Yugo said, "Sorry, Narumi-san. It is not easy for us to simply accept you as any other normal girl." Narumi sat down, saying, "Well, you must." Everyone sat in an uncomfortable silence, except for Tenten, who spoke amicably with the princess. As she noticed, she said, "You don't have to be so silent, you know. I may be the daughter of a daimyo, but I still am a regular girl." Her reaction set them off and the talking resumed. Naruto was sitting between Ino and Hinata. It was difficult for Hinata to talk to him, given the fact that all his attention was being directed towards Ino. However, Narumi was not as shy as Hinata and said, "Naruto, pass the pepper." He ignored her and continued to talk to Ino. But Ino had gone silent and she urged him with his eyes to give Narumi the pepper. Uruka said, "Didn't you hear, Naruto?" Naruto looked at them and said, "Of course I heard. But if any normal girl asked to pass the pepper in that manner, I would ignore her just like this." Everyone stared at him with varying expressions of horror, but Uruka looked at him angrily and started, "Naruto, that's completely right," said Narumi, causing everyone to stare at her. She said, "I think that Naruto was completely right just now. I am trying to be a normal person, but I have got so used to ordering around everyone that I have forgotten my manners. Naruto, can you please pass the pepper?" "Sure, Narumi-san," said the daredevil knucklehead, as he passed the pepper pot to her. Lunch continued with everyone back to normal. Or back to shy, in Hinata's case. As the afternoon went on, Naruto and the other boys hit the beach. Naruto ran out into the ocean with a whoop of joy, before noticing that no one else had joined him. He said, "What's the hold up, guys?" Shikamaru shook his head disparagingly and said, "Don't you think we should wait for the girls?" Naruto grinned and said, "Sure." He came back out and waited. The first girl to come out of the hotel was Ino, walking out confidently in a matte black two-piece, strapless at the top. It left around 85% of her body uncovered, but she couldn't care less. All she wanted was Naruto to look at her. As she found him staring at her, googly-eyed, she thought, jackpot. Ino attracted a large number of catcalls and wolf whistles as she sauntered over to Naruto and said, "Care to put sunblock on my back? I can't reach over to it." Naruto grinned and said, "My pleasure, Ino." Just then, Sakura came out of the hotel as well. She was annoyed at the way Ino had come out without her. Sakura was wearing the pink tank top and blue shorts which Ino had picked out for her. Many on the beach found the modest get-up of Sakura more attractive than Ino's shameless display. But the next arrival completely changed the atmosphere. Narumi burst out of the hotel, and almost every boy at the beach whistled in awe. Except Naruto, whose eyes were focused on Ino's flawless back, and Shikamaru, who thought that the whole thing was too troublesome. Narumi was dressed in an expensive-looking leopard print strapless top and high-cut Brazilian bottoms to match. She came and sat next to the guys, attracting a large gaggle of boys around her. Next out were Hinata and Yugo, Hinata radiating nerves, knowing that Naruto would see her in swimsuit for the first time. She wore a lavender haltered top and gray-blue half-thigh shorts. She certainly looked beautiful and attracted a crowd as well. As she tried to get rid of them and edged closer to Naruto and the gang, he looked up and saw her and Narumi as well. A well-trained part of his mind immediately recorded Narumi's size, 34c 24 to 30. Focus, Naruto, came Ino's voice as he suddenly became aware that his hands were just above Ino's buttocks. He blushed furiously and went back to her upper back. Sakura scowled and looked away. Hinata also blushed brightly and Narumi looked at Naruto thoughtfully. The group of boys kept surrounding her and she finally allowed herself to be dragged away from them and join others in some activities. Tenten had come out of the hotel, wearing a moss green one-piece. It was well-fitting and showed off her toned body and abs without revealing her modesty. Naruto looked at her and thought, 32b 26 to 28. After Ino was done, Yugo came over to them and Naruto thought, 34d 24 to 32. Yugo was wearing a two-toned purple and blue one-piece with a deep plunging neckline down towards her navel point. It was held together by crisscrossing strands of thread. The swimsuit ended in a high-cut bottom, showing her legs and thighs in all of their glory. Some male teachers were bold enough to ask her for a cup of coffee, but she reminded herself of her mission and politely declined, saying that she was in a relationship. Ino, Sakura and Tenten's ears perked up at this and Yugo looked at them uncomfortably. They smirked at her and she thought, I'm so dead. Come on guys, let's hit the water. Naruto shouted and the others agreed. Shikamaru declined, saying, I'm just gonna lie down here, looking at the clouds, thank you. He then whispered to them, that way, I can observe Narumi-san and protect her if she's in any danger. Everyone agreed to his intelligent plan and went out into the water. Everyone splashed water at each other and enjoyed the time until evening came and it became cold out. Naruto gave Ino his towel to wrap around her, and she said, shivering slightly, thanks Naruto. Hinata sighed. She had tried to get Naruto to notice her the entire time. But apart from a brief time when he had splashed her, he had seemed to be with Ino the entire time. As she thought about it, a sudden thought took control of her and she paled. She thought, I can't let that happen. Meanwhile, even Sakura was thinking along the same lines. Naruto seems to have gotten awfully close to Ino. What's up with him? Everyone trooped in for dinner and Narumi joined them again. Iruka spoke, no offense, Narumi-san, but shouldn't you be sitting with your own school students? She shook her head, saying, this is not only an expedition to watch the meteor shower. We're supposed to be making friends with other school children as well. Everyone nodded. Narumi continued, so what do you want to do after school, Tenten? Tenten looked up at her and said, I'm going to take over the family dojo, remember? Narumi said, oh yeah, you had mentioned it before, sorry. What about you, Choji? Choji looked at Iruka, who nodded. I'm going to start a restaurant, he said, to which she nodded, saying, I can see that, because you handled all the spices and condiments extremely well right now. She looked at Hinata, who said, my family wants me to settle down into an arranged marriage. But I know for sure that I do not want that right now. Narumi nodded, sighing and said, I know how that feels. To have your life planned out for you, not allowing you to live outside of it. She looked at Shikamaru, who said lazily, I'll probably just take over the family ranch. She nodded at him, not expecting anything different, considering his attitude. She turned to Ino and asked, are you going to be a model like your mother? Ino started to say, no, before glaring at her and saying, how did you know that my mother was a model? Narumi snorted and said, even with the different hair color and eyes, you have the same face cut, straight nose and lips. Mitsuri could have been the top model in the world, until she mysteriously disappeared 20 years ago. Ino nodded, her glare disappearing and said, my mother fell in love with my dad when he was on a mission to the land of water where she was at a photo shoot. She came back with him. After that, she continued to do some modeling on a small scale in our country, but after she got pregnant and had me, she stopped it and started a flower shop. I do think she misses it sometimes, though. But no, I don't want to be a model. I think I'll take over the family business, like Shikamaru. Narumi looked at Sakura who said, I've already started studying to become a doctor. Narumi looked surprised and impressed, and said, wow, you must be so intelligent. Sakura blushed slightly at the praise and replied, thank you, Narumi-san. Finally, Narumi looked towards Naruto, who as usual began rambling, My dream is to be the next Ho. Before he trailed off, slumping a little bit. He then sat straight back up, saying, to be the next honorable person to continue my family profession. Narumi narrowed her eyes, and then guessed that nothing was wrong. Luckily she didn't happen to look at Ino, who had suddenly slumped backwards, unconscious. Phew, that was a close one, thought Ino, as she looked at Narumi through Naruto's eyes. Narumi asked, and what is your family profession? Ino replied, using Naruto's vocal cords, my father and grandfather used to write books. I want to continue their legacy. Narumi nodded and looked away from him. Just then, Ino released her mind transfer jutsu and went back into her body, before snapping back to attention as Narumi said, you okay, Ino? You look tired, slumping onto your chair like that. Ino replied, faking a yawn, I'm just a bit tired, that's all. Her fake yawn set off a reflex which everyone got caught into, except Naruto, who was suddenly wide awake after having his mind's control taken away from him. Narumi said, it's been fun talking, guys. I guess it's time to hit the bed. I'll see you guys tomorrow. She went off towards her own class, looking back at Naruto once before leaving the dining hall. Everyone congratulated Ino and clobbered Naruto for almost giving them away. As he tried to get up from the ground, clutching his ribs from the punch that Sakura had put through them, Ino said, we better keep a lookout outside Narumi-san's room. We don't want to take any chance, do we? Iruka and Yugo nodded at her thoughtfulness and said, we will keep watch in shifts. First off, I'll keep a watch, after that Yugo, then Shikamaru, Choji, Naruto, Ino, Sakura and finally Tenten. Everyone will keep watch for an hour before being relieved by the next person. Got it? Everyone nodded and then went to their respective rooms. Naruto moved through the rooms, heading towards Narumi's room. He relieved Choji and stood watch outside. He opened her door once to make sure that everything was okay and paled as the outside light fell onto Narumi's face. He quickly shut the door, hoping that she hadn't woken up. But he was wrong. Narumi's door suddenly opened and he felt himself being yanked inside. He stared through the darkness until Narumi reached out and put the light on. She stared at him and then said with a hint of seduction, I've wanted to be with you alone for quite some time now, Naruto-kun. Looks like I finally have my chance. How would you like to marry me? He stared at her, bewildered. He stepped back from her and said, what do you mean, Narumi-san? I was just going to get a drink of water. I've been awake all this time, Naruto-kun. I know that you are a ninja. I know that your dream is to be Hokage. Naruto paled, thinking fast, what? How could she know? Gotta think of something fast. He said quickly, huh? What are you talking about, Narumi-san? Me, a ninja? He laughed nervously and then his laughter faded away as she came closer to him, sliding her right index finger across his chest and tracing his abs over his clothes. I'm not a total idiot, you know, Naruto. My father has taken an interest in your abilities and requested all your mission reports over these few years. Recently, I began borrowing some of them as well. I must say, you are quite exceptionally talented. Narumi said. His eyes widened. She continued, you want to be Hokage, right? I can easily make that wish come true. My father already has approved of you. All it will take is my word, and you can be the next Hokage at the drop of a hat. All I want is for you to be my consort, when I step up and take my father's place as daimyo. He looked at her and said, what's a consort? She almost fell through the floor at his dense attitude. A daimyo's spouse, Naruto, she said, almost exasperated, before she remembered that she was trying to seduce him. He looked at her, even more bewildered, and tried to get away from her. But she held on to him and said, think about it. The Hokage and the daimyo of the Land of Fire being in a relationship. We would have literally no opposition. Think of how powerful our children would be. Naruto blushed at the proposition while she continued seductively, cutting him off. In fact, there's no reason to wait for practicing. He blushed even more and put his hands over his pants as she slowly started sliding her nightgown around her shoulders. He stared at her as she guided her hands towards her not insubstantial bosom. He was in a trance. He stretched his hands out, his mind totally overpowered by his instincts. He was an inch's length away when he suddenly saw a flash in front of his eyes. Green eyes, looking at him happily, green eyes, tears streaming down them, green eyes, looking at him, hurt and angry. He shook her hand off of his and said, what am I thinking? If your father finds out about this, I'm dead for sure. Narumi sighed, pulling her nightgown back over her shoulders. She said, honestly, I didn't expect you to go this far. But I'm serious, Naruto. I would really like to marry you, be your partner, Narumi continued. Naruto said, how can you be serious? You don't know almost anything about me. Narumi shook her head, I know everything about you. Like I said, I started borrowing father's files of your records. I know that you have the nine-tailed fox sealed inside you. I know that you are kind and brave and strong. I know that you have been tormented almost half of your life. But I still want you, Naruto. I am quite serious. Naruto was stunned. She wanted him although she knew that the Kyuubi was sealed inside him? This girl was crazy. He said, I am sorry. I really am. But I'm not sure that I like you so much that I would like to marry you. Narumi looked hurt and offended. He added hastily, not that you aren't beautiful or anything like that. You are stunning and would probably get any guy you want. But I don't think that you love me. I may be just a crush that you have, but because of your sheltered life, you feel that it is true love. And anyway, he continued, a little loudly, over her voice, I've already given my heart to someone else. Narumi's eyes, which were looking down at her feet, shot up in surprise and amazement. Who is it? She asked. He said, Ino Yamanaka. Outside the door, Ino's heart stopped. Tears silently flowed down her cheeks as her mind replayed Naruto's words. She found herself remembering each and every moment of her life she had spent with Naruto, him laughing, sulking, yelling, playing tricks, lying unconscious in the hospital and staring googly-eyed at her. She had only one thought in her mind, he loves me. He loves me too.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.